Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 151. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Rowland, drnorge on the comics forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. I wish I could choose you. Choose us at a candy over this painful obligation of pointing out the need for backup, regulation uniforms, haircuts, shoe shining, saluting, and shoulder dandruff removal. Head and shoulders should be part of every soldier's daily regiment. So says the sensei of the Whatnot, Segulin, and three-time winner of the Themyscira Gigolo of the Year award, Segulin. It's been a while since we've been able to do this. A couple of weeks.
And it's funny you picked this because this Etta Candy is actually an Etta Candy I like.
I know.
And I would choose her.
You used to have like this love-hate relationship with Etta Candy. But
no, I used to just have a hate-hate relationship. I don't think there was a love in there.
Obviously, that was inspired by recent issues of Wonder Woman, which this genocide story has been fabulous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And Steve Trevor coming back and Etta Candy. It's like, a lot of stuff we're going to be talking about next week when we get back to be able to do some Speeding Bullet stuff. I want to talk about Wonder Woman in detail, the last two issues of it, because I think they've been stellar. I want to talk about things like The Mighty, so that'll be on our next week's show. We'll do another Speedy Bullet segment, because Tomasi's had some great stuff, too.
Yeah, just knocking it out the park.
Well, they've got a lot of just great writers right now. Jeff Johns, Gail Simone, Peter Tomasi, keep going on and on. Titans I'm starting to really like. Remember how I've been, Titans, I was very iffy on the regular Titans series right now, and with issue 9 and 10, Winnick's winning me over.
Yeah, there's definitely some really cool stuff going on with Titans, man. Yes. I'm like, and Teen Titans as well. I've been gushing about them for a while. But Titans now, it's all coming together. So,
McKeever's stuff's been great. I've been really enjoying what McKeever's been doing. I've been kind of just, it's all right, the regular Titans series. And now at 9 and 10, this Jericho stuff is really kicking off, and I want to talk about that a little bit next week too. So we got a lot of Speeding Bullets for our next episode. This episode, though, we're going to finish off our David Barron interview and actually flip-flop a couple things from the interview. We had a really long discussion about fandom in general and the internet and the importance of really, as fans, of us being ambassadors, because David kind of got really into this about the fact that, with the internet nowadays, we really need to be, as comic fans, supporting the industry. Not lying about things that you don't like. It's not an issue with that. It's more so there was a nice discussion about really standing behind the books that you're loving, even if it's just one title, to really write letters about it, to promote it on the internet and that type of thing, why it's really important with sales nowadays where they're at, to really kind of promote those books that you're enjoying. So we had a nice, lengthy discussion about that. But then we had a great discussion as well about Green Arrow, Black Canary, his work on there, Vigilante, and Superman Beyond 3D. I actually flip-flopped those two because the discussion about the internet took place first, and then the discussion about the books took place afterwards. But I flip-flopped them. That way people can jump right into the comic discussion first and then kind of enjoy our little rant afterwards. Got some more stuff from New York Comic Con with some of the great conversations we had there, which we had a lot. I had no idea we recorded so much. So we have a lot of those segments that over the next few weeks, they're going to be bonus features on the show where they're going to keep airing in with the other things we're going to be doing as well. Our next episode is going to be Flash Rogues. That's a for sure. We're going to be joined by Mike Sims. And actually, for us, we're recording it tonight, but you're going to be having it next week. And I'm excited to finally talk about Flash Rogues. Our sponsor for this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. It's the end of the month, beginning of the month for us right now, and that means the new books are going to be listed quite soon. I always get excited for that.
Get a little giddy.
Yeah, so definitely check out DCBService.com this week. Look for those 50% and 75% off discounts, because that's how Absolute editions for me. Last month I ordered Absolute Promethea, which was $49.50. And to be able to get Absolutes at that kind of price, it's the only way I can afford Absolutes, because those are, usually, depending on the size of the Absolutes, they're at least a $99 price tag, and to be able to get them at 50% off like that is the only way I can do it. But I know the one that's coming up, and I think it's next month, I might be wrong, it might be the month after, is Absolute Death by Neil Gaiman, and that's... I've got all of the Absolute Sandman volumes, so I was hoping they would do this, and they finally announced it. I don't know if it's going to be in next month's order or the following months, but it's one that people are going to watch out for. So definitely check it out. There's also a book that's going to be available for pre-order on Comics Podcasting, which I know we're in there, Comic Geek Speak, a whole bunch of, I'm not going to list all the podcasts that are in there because I haven't actually read the book yet, but we're going to sometime this month get the writer on to talk about that book. It's done from Tomorrow's Publishing. So there'll be more details over the next month after it's finally solicited, and we'll definitely do an ad for it on the show because I want to support this book a great deal. But it's very flattering that we're going to be in a book.
Sweet.
Yeah, so did I tell you about that?
No, I'm hearing about this for the first time. I'm like, wow, that's cool.
The way you were looking at it, I'm like, oh, I think I forgot to tell him about this. Well, that'll be even better because we're going to have him on and we're going to talk about this book. So it's coming out. It's going to be in the previews this month that we're going to be able to purchase this book. So I'm excited. We'll do a definite ad this month, though, so people can get on board that. But remember, the DCBS, whatever your shipping preferences, bag and porting preferences, DCBS accommodates your collecting needs. I'm still weekly with them, and I'm loving it because I'm getting my books. They come out Wednesday. I get them by Thursday, Friday, depending on the week, and they're bagged and boarded, and everything's done with such care that I've never had a problem with them. It's been an absolute wonderful service. I've used it for years, and I'm thrilled that they sponsor us on the show because it's great to be able to promote something that I've been enjoying so much. I want to talk about, you had a great idea, seeing as we couldn't talk about direct books from DCB Service, let's do a little bit of an InStockTrades.com ad where we talk about some of the Watchmen materials that are available. They have, of course, the Absolute Watchmen, which, Absolute Watchmen's $75. They have it at 37% off. It's $47.25. Which, if you haven't picked up Absolute, you have the Absolute Watchmen.
Oh, yeah,
now.
I have Absolute, yeah.
All the bonus materials in the back are well worth it, besides the fact that everything's oversized and that gorgeous Dave Gibbons art. We talked about it back on the show, back when we originally did Watchmen. I had read Absolute Watchmen for that, and I can't recommend that volume enough. But it's a good time right now, if you haven't picked it up, to grab that. There's also a book that I got as a Christmas gift from my friend Chris Kendall called Watching the Watchmen. It's a hardcover. Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' graphic novel Watchmen is one of the best-selling graphic novels ever, and has stayed continuously in print since its release in 1987. Artist Dave Gibbons presents his unique perspective on the creation of this seminal work in Watching the Watchmen, the definitive companion to Watchmen. From concept art to excised pages, from early script extracts to character designs and rare portfolio art, Watching the Watchmen will give readers new insights into the work that Time magazine acclaimed as one of the 100 best English language novels published since 1923. Both a major art book and a companion to the graphic novel, Watching the Watchmen will change how you experience Watchmen. And it's regularly $39.95. They have it at 25% off. It's only $29.96. And that's a great book, and it's one I recommend. Great. I didn't know the book came out, and Chris got it from me for Christmas. It was such a great thing because I'm like, I didn't even know this book existed. And he presented me with it, and that's why when you suggested it as an ad, I'm like, let's talk about some of the support pieces. If you didn't pick up Flash Rogues, Flash Rogues, the trade paperback, it covers Flash 177 to 181. It's next week's show. It's regularly $14.99, 47% off, only $7.94. And we're recording that and putting it out to you for next Sunday. So if you haven't had a chance to pick that up.
Yeah, pick it up.
Yeah. And Absolute Batman The Long Halloween is going to be in March. I don't know the exact date because we have some interviews that we're doing after Flash Rogues. But I'm thinking now the way time-wise it's going to work out, it'll probably be really close to our 3rd-year anniversary show. So it'll be part of that whole...
We'll call it our 3rd-year anniversary show then.
Well, if we get it in before that, I'll get it in before, because it seems like you and I just always have a ton of extra things that pop up. It's going to be in March. That's a for sure. But InStockTrades.com is your source for collected edition needs. Remember, orders of $50 or more, free shipping. Which
outstanding.
Yeah, and with all the stuff that's... I mean, if you go get some Watchmen stuff, you can get the free shipping on that right away from buying any of that. But... Jim, we have a voicemail line, and next week's show we're going to have voicemails back on. Feel free to send us your thoughts on DC Comics, news, and characters by calling 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. Get right to that one. And I love having the voicemails on the show because there's a lot of times things you and I want to cover on the show that we haven't been able to get to, but then a listener will be passionately talking about it, and we get off on a little tangent talking about that particular book or title or news tidbit. So that'll be great to have that back on. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Sean, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth in a plot line, story twist, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Jim, I want to talk about the forum really quick. I had a couple listeners, Howard and a gentleman by the name of Mark, who let me know, and I'm sure it's probably not exclusive to these two, they were having trouble signing up for the forum. If anybody's having trouble signing up for the forum for whatever reason, and they were waiting for their forum to be approved, their forum account to be approved, send me an email to ragingbullets@gmail.com and let me know. Our forum is generally maintained by the Comic Geek Speak guys, and they're very generous in the fact that they let us be a part of all that. What's nice is there's a lot of comics podcasts in our group that actually are part of the same forum community, so if you do one login, you can participate in a lot of forum discussions from different podcasts. The problem with that is, though, I'm not in charge of accounts, which is, you don't want every podcast that's on there to be in charge of accounts, because that could be a whole big mess. I guess when I was talking to Peter Rios, though, he said there's been a lot of spam accounts that have been trying to be generated. And the problem with that is it's hard for those guys then to maintain what's spam and what's not. So if you have a problem getting in there, it's not that we want everybody who wants to be a part of the comic discussions to be a part of it. Let me know if you're having a problem. We'll make sure to get you in. So there was a couple people that were a little frustrated about the fact they couldn't get in, understandably so. And I want to make sure that that's taken care of if it's not, so I can help facilitate that problem if it's an issue. That's about it on that. But Jim, let's get back into our interview with David Barron as we talk about Vigilante, Green Arrow, Black Canary, and Superman Beyond 3D.
Holy caffeine!
David, there's, not to jump us back into Green Arrow, Black Canary after this, because we had a really cool tangent there. There is a sequence I want to talk about that you guys have done so recently in Green Arrow, Black Canary that I don't want to forget about. This creation of Poison Arrow.
Okay, what issue are we referring to right now?
We're referring to, first, it was issue 15.
Okay, up to 50, okay.
Where the girl, her husband is...
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, Poison Arrow. Okay, I'm with you.
Mm-hmm. And Ollie, just in passing, there's this wonderful moment where just in passing he saves her from this, from this abusive boyfriend, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And what I really liked is the contrast of how you colored it in this issue versus how you colored it in issue 16, where we're seeing a much more twisted version of her, where we see her after this, where the apartment that she's living in is very barren. And the only life really in that apartment at that stage, because you do a lot of purples in the issue 16 with her. And,
right, and this will be funny to you when we talk about it, I tell you. Keep going.
Okay. And when it's really, because the original segment with her is, there's a lot of color to it, and you're very much in the moment, and it's a flashback in the next issue. And when we actually do see her apartment, there's nothing else in her apartment except for these pictures of Ollie.
Right.
And it just shows that he somehow has become, you can even see it if you see the foreshadowing of it in issue 15, where the look in her eyes is she's kind of looking longingly at him. But then when we see her in issue 16, you see how much that, like, anytime you see anything else in her existence, there doesn't seem to be much there except for, like, this purple tone, except when Ollie's involved. And that's when the color seems to come back into the sequence. I just really appreciated the way that developed over those two issues, because she's a character that I'm intrigued with. Which it's very rare that you see new characters that are twisted villain-like characters. It reminds me kind of like what I like about a Catwoman character, but I'm not trying to say that she's cookie cutter with that. I like the kind of... I want to know more about her. I want to see what she's going to bring to the table. She's definitely got something, she's a little bonkers, and I like that about her.
Right.
But the way that sequence was framed and how different it was from her first appearance, I really appreciated visually what you did.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the character. Again, I think that if we go away from thinking that things are cookie cutter, and what you said, it wasn't cookie cutter. You don't want to say that and label that, and I think that's a good thing, because it's about reference. Now, how many people have, we've all went through high school. How many girlfriends have we had that maybe a little off, a little obsessive, or girls out there that are fans and listening to this right now? How many boyfriends have you had that are a little obsessive, maybe have one too many pictures of you, or, things like that, and didn't really like the fact that you broke up? Especially in this MySpace generation, I'm not on MySpace. I was on MySpace. I just couldn't take it anymore, especially for these type of characters. There are these characters all all over, where they're obsessive and they're a little off base. So I think before, and I'm not saying that you did, because you didn't. You actually, put in that little, note to say, I'm not saying it's cookie cutter, but I think that's why we like this girl, because it reminds us of someone we used to know who's, yes, they're fun. I mean, there's a reason why we went out with them, but at the same time, there's a reason why we broke up with them also. There's a reason why we don't call them our wives. And so I think characters like this are always fun, and I think it can remind us to Catwoman. It reminds me more of Harley Quinn.
Yes, yeah.
Who I'm absolutely, in love with, just for the fact that she's a little bit more crazy and almost strikes a little bit more to the girls in my past than a Catwoman. I think Catwoman is a little bit more sophisticated, and so again, I think it's a creation of maybe something that the writer experienced more than a copying of a character. And again, I'm not saying that's what you were saying, because I just want to point out to the fans that that's how creators work. The only way we can write and the only way we can draw and color is through our experiences. Hunter S. Thompson said on the making of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, because there's all this LSD scenes and things like this, and I'll tell you right now, I understand what he's saying, because I've never done LSD. I've never dropped acid or, all those other things that people did in the 70s, quite often. So I have no idea what it seemed like to them. So the director also has never done a drug. So the director says, and no reason not to believe him. But how can he recreate an LSD scene if he's never done LSD? So at the same time, I think the part of the reason that you might like this character more than another girl that's created is because that writer actually experienced a person like this character. And, I think when you think of comics in that terms, boy, does that make that story that much more exciting. Ooh, there's someone like this person. I mean, again, Kevin Smith, is again right on, because Chasing Amy, people love that book because they believe that actually happened. And in some ways it did. He wrote the book based off, life experiences but he did it more, literal, and we're superhero comic people, writers, do it a little bit more with metaphoric references and character building, who are superheroes.
I was passionate enough about this character and how you guys laid this character out, and just visually how I loved the distinction between the two issues and her sequence, because you saw the sequence from a very different point of view, a very different mindset, I should say, of the character. Right. She was changed by that experience, and when we saw the sequence played back in issue 16, the way that her mind had changed was very clear in the visual presentation of the same sequence that we saw in the previous issue. It was a little geek out thing for me. It was a tiny detail how just coloring and atmosphere-wise you had changed how that was framed visually, in a way that it showed that change in her mental state.
Right. Well, so we talked about, necessarily the character and how we kind of developed the character. Now, again, this is me, just saying kind of my opinion on how the character kind of came to be, or possibility of how the character came to be. But now let's talk about the actual, work itself, at the technical side. The layout change, we have to give credit to the artist, because the artist changed the layout, but then even before that, a little credit to the writer to kind of set that up, to maybe even inspire the artist to lay it out that way. Now, behind the scenes things, a lot of script will say to the penciler, and I'm not going to name a name because it happens all the time, so I'm just going to refer to it as writer or penciler. The writer will say to the penciler, I'm thinking it's an 8-panel page, but if you think you can fit it in less and you want to fit it in less, go ahead. I'm thinking it's a 4-panel page, but if you want to make it a 5-panel page, to convey another action, go ahead. That happens a lot in comics. And so sometimes a layout could be very much so that of an artist, and sometimes it could be that much of a writer. So on the layout side part of it, the colorist gets to use, again, a colorist is there to use what is given to him to the fullest amount of his capability. In this scenario, again, we talked about helping out colorists. That scene was actually colored by Canela Tripp. It was not colored by me. I was actually on vacation in Hawaii for a honeymoon when that scene needed to be done.
Congratulations.
Yes. But however, when I approve everything that's done, and I looked at it, and the purple part was actually my suggestion. And the reason why I did, the flashback differently was just to keep the flashback together. A lot of flashbacks can be done in just solid grays and things like that. The separation was nice, and I thought it did, how you picked up on add the character. Now, what Canary did was really good, was very nice. And, again, I like to give credit where it's deserved. I'm not ashamed that, I have to ask for help here and there, because deadlines are deadlines. But in terms of that particular issue, Canary Trip was my help on that book. And I thought did a great job and brought a lot to it. And but we definitely talked about what we want to convey in the book. I make sure that I definitely do that. That I'm thinking this, and he's worked with me so long. We met at Wildstorm Effects. He's an old Wildstorm Effects colorist. Actually, he ran the department. That's how we met. And we joke around all the time that at that time, I told him what to do, and that's because that's my personality, So it kind of worked out well, anyways, that he helps me out here and there, and I would return favors. Today I had nothing on my plate. It's kind of like just like spring cleaning day in terms of after a big project, throw away all the Coke cans that are everywhere and all the wrappers, from the deadline heavy work week. And he calls me up and he needed 2 pages right away because he had a book due today. So like I said, I believe that colorists should not be ashamed of saying to their editors or to the fans that they got help, because if anything, it just adds more to, not even that, it just adds to the true life of a comic book creator. That A, we don't get all day, to make something, and B, when we do make something brilliant in such a short fashion or amount of time, it's nice for the fan to understand that. So, and I will let him know he likes his name heard as much as Alan Pasalakwa. So I will let him know, about this, to check that out, that you were, a fan of that sequence and that character, because it does mean a lot to him also.
The funny part is when people are going to hear back this episode, they're going to think every time you say Alan Pasalakwa that you're swearing. Because we mentioned originally that was going to be the bleep.
I think that would be the funniest version, is to send one to Alan and say, hey, this is the thing, and have his name all there, and then he'll actually check the podcast, right, yeah. And he'll re-listen to the edited version and say, oh, this is the unedited version, and then it's just a bunch of bleeps. That is funny. So I'm still waiting for the old man comic review section that you guys will do, as we talked about earlier. So maybe I'll send that in every so often. Yeah.
One of the sequences that I wanted to talk about too was in Vigilante #2.
Okay.
The fight between Vigilante, Flynn, and Drudge in the stairwell.
Yes.
Where, he's in costume. I really loved the intensity of how that segment turned out, with the color scheme and just it goes to the whole art team on that one. Because it was a moment where we talk about a character where really in the first 2 issues, as a reader, I needed him defined in such a way, like, where am I going to connect with this guy? Why am I going to want to keep following him? What is unique about this character? And you see here that he has got a mission that he's on. And he needs to accomplish that goal. His helmet gets knocked off at this point, so this identity, this Flynn identity that he is using to advance himself and to advance his goals has been compromised. Not only is that an issue right now, but he also is on the clock that he is aware at this time that the electrocutioner is going after Lei, his target.
Right.
And the intensity of the action in that sequence and how that visually played out for me on so many different levels of what I'm just talking about there was a sequence that I just particularly appreciated, because we got to see that at this point in time he can't sacrifice the Flynn identity. And Drudge becomes expendable. That's the difference between this guy, that the mission is the most important thing. And I'm anxious to see, because he has a moment at the end of this issue that's really pivotal to me, where he has to take a look at the electrocutioner and say, how am I different than him or not? And I'm curious to follow that and to see how he resolves that in himself. In the first 2 issues, there were certain segments that got me hooked. This was one of them that made me say, I'm on for 3, I'm on for 4, I'm on for 5. This segment I think it's a character-defining segment.
Yeah, there's a couple things I would like to point out on Vigilante. First, I won't say anything about number 3 in terms of storyline. Maybe some things artwork-wise to pay attention to, color-wise. More on 2. 2, I want to point out there's certain instances where I really paid homage to Lynn Varley. And even, obviously Frank Miller inspired also, but really Lynn Varley, the way she colors and paints. Part of it was the fight scene at the very beginning when they get into prison. When the fight gets broken up by the guards, the very last panel, and I don't know if you guys actually have this in front of you, and it's okay that if you don't, but the very last panel of when that page 9, the last panel of that page, that the way I colored the foreground was just a basic grad from a red, from the normal colors, and that was a way that, I wanted to kind of like share with people that other people from the past have inspired me, and whether they inspired me when I was younger or when they inspire me just now as I'm looking at some of the older work. But I hope like that kind of bridges the gap a little bit from the past to the present, that some of the techniques in the past can still be used today. And it's a beautiful thing. It's not a flat thing. I hate when people say, oh, that color he's no good because it's all flat color. You're not looking at the rendering always. Sometimes you're looking at the mood that's set, the emotion that's put back in there. And then also on page 6, when a woman is undressing, panels 3, 4, and 5, that's all again a huge attempt to say thank you to what Lynn Varley has done. It's smooth, it's simple, it's soft, and I'm sure part of her style is a compliment to to someone else. So it's I think a kind of a neat little thing to look at in issue 2. Again, that was page 6 and was it page 9 I said?
Yes.
And so if you have the issue and you're listening to this and you're looking at look at those panels on those pages, and hopefully you could see some of the attempt at least of recreating something that she has done.
JJ and Vigilante have style.
Yeah.
They seem to have. I love the way that relationship was working out with the suit winding up and equipment winding up in the various places where he's using that resource to pre-plan for things to happen or after the fact to get information and equipment where it's needed to be. And the fact that they're willing to use any kind of resource available, any kind. And that was an interesting tone and theme that was set here, too, that they don't have the certain rules that other heroes that are more goody-goody have to apply by. They're accomplishing the mission in any way necessary, using any type of tool that they need to use to accomplish that goal. And I really like that distinction. It's something different. It's a fresh flavor, and I really like that.
I think it's a brilliant thing. I always, when I write comics, again, maybe you'll see something written by me, the next year or two. But when I write comics, I try to write them in a realistic sense so people can relate to it. I try to write them in a sense that could happen. And I think Marv Wolfman also has the same, passion. And I mean, he's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. Anybody that may have not liked something in the past, don't judge him on the past. Judge him now, what he's doing with this book. And if you liked him in the past, that might give you incentive, but, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll like him now. And but I think he added some very realistic things to this character to separate him. I mean, Batman had Alfred, but Batman really did it all on his own. Batman was, the guy who, is thinking of this and thinking of that. And in this book, JJ is a huge part of Vigilante's success, a huge part. As you will read in issue 3, there's going to be some good stuff coming. I'm not going to give any spoiler alert, but we were talking about issue 1 and 2 sucked you in. Wait till you get issue 3. That sucked me in. That made 100% sure that I'm going to stay with this book as long as they'll have me. because every issue, I loved issue 1, I loved issue 2, and boy did I love issue 3. And again, I'm not just saying that because, I'm working on the book. It's keeping me involved, and it's keeping me on my toes to keep producing as best work as possible. I'm not sure who's fully in charge of the logo. I think Carlin has a good say in it, but I think production, has a good. But even in the logo, from Vigilante 1 being with the bright white to Vigilante 2 going to the gray, little things in the logo. These things add to the whole package of the book. It's like I said, I feel right now that I'm on a project that's going to turn out to be pretty special in the longevity of the character. And I think that as a fan, this is your opportunity to hop on a board. Because wouldn't it have been nice, because I know that you went back to read Planetary, but wouldn't it have been nice to be on board at issue 1, and live through the excitement that other people that were with issue 1 are reading. And I think Vigilante, possibly, I don't want to put the pressure on Marv or anything like this, or Rick, but or even myself, but I think we possibly could be on the verge of creating another nice experience that will be remembered for quite some time, and then later will be remembered. If you've never read this, you better read it. How many people have said that about Watchmen? If you haven't read Watchmen, you better go get it. Plain and simple. If you haven't read this, you better go get it. And I think Vigilante, along with the Watchmen and Authority and Planetary and only like a handful of other books, this possibly could be one for DC Comics in the long run of setting up a character. Because like I said, you get so captivated by the character that I think, even though, as we all know of the older one, I think this one is going to solidify his place in DCU. I think this is the one that, I have a video game, Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, and I love it.
I've got it.
And there's characters in there that you're just like, I wonder how those characters got in it and these ones didn't. Well, it's because of certain storylines that solidified their characters so much, whether it's a villain or a hero. And I think if they create another one, Vigilante might be that. People might look at it like, why is Vigilante in it? Well, did you not read the series? Then that's why you don't know, because you don't know why. So but who knows? Maybe I'm more excited than other people are, but at the same time, isn't that what reading comics is about? It's entertainment, and it's entertainment for yourself, and not necessarily for others. So. I don't know. I'm pretty excited.
I don't know. As a fan, I want to believe that people, when they're on projects, are on projects that are giving them this kind of passion and excitement that you're getting from this. So I'm loving this, because that's something, I get that passion when I read it. So it's really nice for me to hear the creative end gets excited about certain projects. And there's one where you're just kind of like, wow, I'm just really into this right now. This is just a lot of fun to work on. And I'm excited as a reader because I'm going to feel that energy coming through on the pages when I get to experience it on my end, which is very different than your end.
Right. I can't say that I'm passionate about every project I work on, that some of them do feel like work. But at the same time, when we're not as passionate, it doesn't mean that we're not passionate, at the same time. So it's kind of like, I think if people chalk it up to everyday experiences, again, relate the work that we do to the work that you do. That as much as you love the podcast and you feel that you need to talk about this book just because people want to, but you may not be in it, but you can't wait to talk about this book, it doesn't mean you didn't like the other book.
Right.
It just means that you couldn't wait to talk about this one. And I feel that's kind of how Vigilante is for me right now. Has overall, it's just speaking to me personally in a way that is bringing out different sides of my creativity. And again, it's all enabled by Marv and Rick. If they weren't doing what they were doing, and Mike, the editor, wasn't doing, what he's doing, how can I do anything? And even Harvey Richards, who's the assistant editor, or I hope it's not associate, I don't know what his title is. I think it's assistant editor on the book. He gives me all the help I need to do what I do. As a colorist, I personally feel like I never want to take credit for anything, on the book, because everybody else is aspiring and everybody else is putting in so much more work than I am. And I think that's where that passion comes from, because they're putting in so much work that I'm excited because I'm seeing that work 100%. And again, it has nothing to do, or I'm not saying that other books aren't putting in the work. I'm just saying that this work that they're putting in really speaks to me. And I feel good about being excited. So, and I'm glad that, you were excited to talk about this book as the other books.
I saved these deliberately, and it was really hard because I wanted to talk about them, but I think it's more fun to talk about it in this light because I had a chance to. This is the first time people are hearing me kind of geeking out and having a good time with these, and it's appropriate time to do that. Let's jump into Superman Beyond 3D real quick. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is, and I thought it was interesting, this is a 3D issue. Mm-hmm. How does that affect your end of it? Because do you have to is it business as usual when you're crafting a book like this? Or is it something that you have to take into consideration, the fact that it's going to be in 3D? I didn't know how that worked out. I was curious about that.
Well, okay, there's a couple of factors on this book. One starts with Grant Morrison. He wrote in 3D. He laid out page. I hope, again, people appreciate what he's really trying to lay down for you to read, because he put so much into that script. When I was reading the script, it was so detailed that I actually got lost a couple times, not because it was confusing, but because I was reading so much and concentrating on so much that you almost had to reread what he was actually saying, because it was, in humble terms, brilliant. Whereas it's like he is going to try to make the ultimate Superman story. My friend Neil Posner, he's old editor, not an old editor. He's a young man. There's two Neil Posners. One passed away, who was also editor. This one's my friend, still living. But he said to me one time, and I want to give him the credit for the quote: "Why do a Batman story if it's not going to be different?" And obviously you could take that character, of his quote, Batman, and turn it into Superman. Why, there's so many Superman stories out there. There's so many Batman stories out there. Why accept the job as Grant Morrison, or as Warren Ellis, or as Alan Moore, or which I doubt Alan Moore will write a Superman story, but why accept that character if you're not going to do something different? And to Grant Morrison's credit, again, whether you think it was brilliant or not, he set out to do something brilliant. And he really thought in 3D the whole time. And so everything he wrote, he wanted to make sure that we were giving the reader just a great experience. How we talked about Vigilante being a ride, he talked about in the book that this book he wants to change the way we think of Superman, not so much in a different light, but more of a brighter light. He wanted to re-solidify again that Superman is the man. That Superman, and again, people have done that before, but he's trying to do it in a different way. So right off the bat, I want to give him because the question was, how do we tackle a 3D book? Well, it starts off with the writer tackling a 3D book, and that is exactly what he did. Superman has 3D vision, and that takes him to a different plane in our universe, because they're way beyond my comprehension. But that's the fun of comics. You don't have to comprehend everything. So he did that first. Then it goes to Doug. Now Doug did a great job of, and I can actually tell the little differences. And he's already almost a 3D artist as without even doing 3D. So he's perfect for the job, because not only do I think his Superman's the best looking Superman in comics, but he puts things in the background, middle ground, foreground, and extreme close-up. He's constantly laying layers of art and layers of thickness, and which again goes to a lot of credit of the inker. So it's just a total effort. But Doug is already brilliant at laying the 3D effect. Okay, now it comes to me. Do I tackle anything different on 3D? Yes and no. Okay, my philosophy in coloring is to separate already. Separate foreground from background, and that's why in like Vigilante and Green Arrow, you might see some characters in the immediate foreground that are meaningless and are blue and dark, because that way we really look at the characters that we want to look at. So if you ever see a blue bush and wonder why that blue bush is so dark, it's really because I don't want you looking at it. That's just there, because that completes the scene. But at the same time, we're trying to make it so far ahead of the people that you're not looking at the bush, you're looking at the people. So I'm doing that anyways. But because the book's going to be in 3D and the books is going to change that anyways, because the technical side of 3D manufacturing, the person that actually decides on what to pull out and what to push back is going to do that. I did not need to switch many colors. Is that pretty clear? Is that good?
No. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Okay. So I don't have to do too much. I can just kind of create a very normal space where everything's kind of hit by the same type of light. I don't have to worry about making this foreground thing pop foreground, because a 3D renderer will do that, for me. So I can kind of just concentrate on overall mood of the book. Now, I would like to say that, and again, this is my own opinion, and I wasn't a fan of the way it turned out. And not that I think the story and the art is amazing. I really wish that they would print it again and not 3D. And the only reason I say that is because when I put on the glasses, I couldn't see all of Doug's detail. And his artwork on these pages are so brilliant that if you have a chance to go find his, if he's at a Comic-Con, to go find his originals, black and white, please do so, because there are some brilliant pages, so much detail. And the 3D, to no fault of the 3D artist, it's just the things that you have to willing to give up, in the 3D process fade away, in the book. And it was kind of sad to see that happen, because some of the best pages are in 3D. So it would be nice to see it. But then again, maybe we should never print it all normal, not in the 3D, because that's part of Grant's vision. This story will never be seen not in 3D. That it's part of the storyline that unless you have the 3D vision, you don't get to see it. So I guess it's kind of interesting that way.
From a reader's standpoint, what I did enjoy about the glasses, first of all, when you pulled out the glasses, they weren't regular 3D glasses in the sense that they weren't generic. The design of the glasses was in such a way they were giving you the 4D vision and little tiny details like that I liked. But I did like that this was a storytelling gimmick versus being let's just do a 3D issue for no reason.
Yes, I really appreciated that fact also. The funny part is, and again, this is the industry secret, was sometimes, and this is no slight to the editor whatsoever, okay, so, no, but I was not informed that the 3D vision parts, I thought the whole issue was going to be 3D. I didn't know only part of it was. And then when I found out that only part of it was 3D, I did not realize that it was part of the story. I thought maybe they just kind of picked some pages. I didn't realize that, again, the brilliance of Grant Morrison is that to incorporate a 3D, how he said, quote-unquote, gimmick, to not be a gimmick but part of the story. Again, he said he wanted to tell a Superman story like no other, and he accomplished that brilliantly. But like I said, the trade secrets, I was not aware of that. And I think that even on some ways, other people, part of the job, weren't on the same page as Grant, which is not uncommon in comics, because again, one man's vision could be lost with someone else. But in this thing, I hope Grant is excited about this book. I hope he thinks that it's brilliant, and that we did everything that he wanted to be done, that his vision really came to life, and because I am proud of the book. I think it's really a really spectacular looking book. I'm always a fan of Doug's art. We worked together for so long on JLA, and then we moved on to I think like 7 different projects after JLA, together, and I'd work with him any chance I could. So. But yeah, so the whole aspect of coloring the 3D, is there much to it? A little to it, because now I have to think in 3D. But again, go look at any of the non-3D pages, and I hope that we have the same separation of foreground, middle ground, and background that we do on anything else.
It flows incredibly well throughout the whole issue. Like, it wasn't for me, the 3D parts, they enhance. But when I talked with you about the Vigilante helmet, how I felt like those reds in that particular segment made me feel like I was looking through his helmet at some point.
Uh-huh.
This, with the 4D vision, it made me feel like I was looking through Superman's eyes during those parts. But
definitely.
I never felt like it was a jarring transition between any of the scenes leading into that and any of the scenes leading out to it. So, I mean, I guess that's where, when you're asking, did that separation work all the way through? Yes, because I never felt like, oh my gosh, now I'm back into reality, and it felt very smooth in the transition versus being something where it felt like wow, all of a sudden I'm here and it doesn't work or something like that. It did work very well.
Yeah, it's very seamless. To color it was not seamless, which is kind of funny. That as a colorist, another little insight to coloring, sometimes you get pages fed to you the way the artist wants to feed them. And sometimes the artist might go 1 to 22, but the inker might go 1, 7, 6. So when we're trying to tell a story, some things are lost. And I had to do the 3D pages for issue 1. I think we did those 2 months before I did the rest of the book. And as you know from reading the book, the 3D pages in issue 1 are not, all together. It's some here, some there, some here, So as a colorist, it's very hard to stick to your guns, or at least my guns, of saying I'm trying to help tell the story fully. It's almost like flying without a script. If I don't know what's on page 6 and 7, how can I color page 8? Because what if something, I have one time colored a whole book at night because the script said nothing at all, because it made sense to me. And then all of a sudden I get page like 7, 8, and it's morning with the sun coming up, and it was clearly the sun. You couldn't fake it be the moon, and all this stuff. And I looked at, and I told the editor, I go, it said nothing, I had to tell him, it said nothing about day or night. I thought the book would look better in these type of color schemes. And all of a sudden, the last few pages you give me have a sun on it. What am I supposed to do? And what we did is we took out the sun, took out that type of thing, and just made it night because of that type of air. So that is, again, because of the production line of comics to get them out. Sometimes that has to happen. Now there's 2 errors in Superman Beyond #1. And I hate these errors. They bug me, and I redid it. So hopefully, if it's ever collected or republished, it'll be fixed. But because it's 3D, I don't know if it ever will be fixed. On issue 1, if you guys look at page 1, right off the bat is the first error. Superman has 2 red eyes. It's a 3D page. He's supposed to have 1 red and 1 green because that's his 4D vision. And I already blew it. So the very first page I do for the book, I ruin. So, and again, remember we're talking about, you asked me how much do I critique myself and stuff. That kills me. I feel 100% like I let Grant down, that I let Doug down, and that I ruined his vision slightly. Now, hopefully most people don't see that. I know there will be some like, hey, on page 4 he had a Pepsi can. Page 5 he has a Pepsi can or something like that. You always have those people. I'm sure they have seen that. And so that's one of those things, the very first page of the very first issue that's supposed to be brilliant and set up the stuff, I mess up. And so, like I said, if we're talking about criticizing oneself, yes, I definitely do that. And this is a good example that it takes a lot of, I don't know, self-reflection to even be able to say it where fans can look at it, and obviously they now realize that it was my mistake. It's 100% my fault. At that point when I turned in that page, and then if you see page 2, 3, red eyes, and then 100% my mistake that when I had to color that page, I did not understand that what the story was really portraying. And then I think when you get to finally like page 5 or 6, there's Superman finally with the red and green eyes. So, but yeah, so that's another little I think they call them carrots, right, in the DVDs. Another little carrot about Superman Beyond.
The only thing that I think worked on that one, being honest with you, I didn't notice it because it was at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think if that had happened midway through after we'd already seen it, it would have been right in my face. I didn't. I'll be honest with you. I didn't. And I read the issue 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it at all. Now, you're right. There's probably people who did. Fine, okay, but I think what ended up working there, just speaking from why I didn't notice it, is its placement. Right in the beginning versus smack in the middle. All of a sudden, like, wait, what happened to his eyes?
Right, so true. It's a thing that hopefully, because I'm pretty darn sure Grant noticed, and again, sure. That's why I feel like I let him down more than I let necessarily the reader down, and I corrected it as soon as possible. But like I said, since it went to the 3D processing, I don't know if I don't think you could just plug in another page that I did underneath. I think it takes more than that. But thanks, you made me feel a little bit better.
With the 3D processing itself, is that computerized generated? Is it partially person? How is that actually done? Because I'm trying to figure
Well, that's the funny part, because just like how many people do not know what I did back in the day a long time ago with coloring, that no one even knew what a colorist really did, and they're still just now kind of finding out about how much we do. Where is there's a credit that says 3D by Rayzone, but who's Rayzone? What is the 3D process? How much artistic skill does it take to pull out a 3D area? How much dedication and time and detail does it take? Sadly, the honest answer is I don't know. I have a couple theories of a computer process going through it where you're saying, this is the foreground, so you put this much 3D filter over it. This is the middle ground, so it gets this much, and this is the background. But the complete honesty is that I don't know. I don't know how they do it. I think that's part of the fun of 3D for me. It's kind of like a magician. If you know how the trick's done, some people don't appreciate it, where other people appreciate it more just for either the simpleness of the creativity or the complexity. But yeah, I mean, the 3D was done by Rayzone. I have no clue how.
So you didn't sit around while you were working with the 3D glasses on just to make sure everything was going good?
Yeah, because again, the 3D effect never took place till way after I was done. In some ways, I wish I had that much control. Again, because as I said before, and I want to say it again, because it's not as harsh as it might sound, but I'm not a huge fan of 3D books just because I don't get to see the beauty of it. Now, a 3D movie is pretty really focused, and usually, I know with Beowulf, Monsters vs. Aliens are coming out. When it's 3D, it's pretty clean and clear where, they only really pick out certain things to be fully 3D. It's the only bouncing ball going all the way across, where this book, and again, it has to do with the artwork of Doug, because how complex he already is as an artist. There's a lot going on in 3D, and I'm a fan of the book. I'm a fan of the 3D part, just for what you guys have said, that it makes you feel like you're in Superman's vision, that you are Superman right now looking through his world, or right next to him, and it makes you flow through the story the way Grant has intended to do it, in terms of telling a Superman story that has never been told before. You are now fully going with him onto another, realm, another planet, and it's awesome. On the artistic side is what we're talking about.
There's something I really wanted to tell you, how I appreciated what you did color-wise, and it did come through, even though it was actually a segment that was not 3D that led to 3D. Okay. The combination of Ultraman and Superman, when they came together.
So issue 2, okay.
Yeah, in issue 2, Superman's very bright, and you're right. It's the classic Doug Superman. I mean, does it look good there? But then we see this amalgamation of the two, and when we see them, it becomes a very dark, which reflects. It kind of reminds me of in Superman 3 when he took like that dark turn in that, and I mean that in a totally complimentary way, because I liked that the costume has a little bit of a darker tone. He looks definitely like there's, with Ultraman being in him now and being a part of him now, that there is a shift in this character that has happened because he's now got this negative opposite side of him, a part of him. and this opposite end of him. And I really liked visually how that came about, that he looked, it's clear that it's Clark, it's clear that it's Superman, that he's there, but that this other entity is a part of him as well, and there is a visual shift that shows that in some ways he's more powerful, but in some ways he's containing something too, and trying to maintain that kind of, that integrity almost of who he is,
right,
and that goal, and I really ate that up. It was something that visually it was very, I don't want to say it's subtle, but it wasn't like in your face at the same time. And I appreciated the way that that was handled, because you got to visually feel it in a way that I think just worked. It just worked on such a nice, and the world around him was matching not just what he was going through, but the fact that it was Mondrak that he was fighting, who is this monitor that was the most powerful of the monitors. In the way, he was almost the Superman of the monitors, but he had fallen. And it was a very dark sequence that was appropriately dark that I think just worked on so many levels.
I think there's two things on that, and one you picked it up perfectly of the subtlety, because what basically happened in the storyline, or at least what we're going for, and I don't, sometimes, like I said, all the words that we put in a script and talk about don't always go into the book. But it's definitely, the statue of him coming to life to a point. What would happen if the Statue of Liberty came to life and really was the symbol that the Statue of Liberty, stands for? What if it came to life and did everything that it stands for? And Superman is that statue. Superman is the person that, if he was alive in the real world, what would he do? He would take down the evilest of the evil. And would he be 100% bright blue and red? No, he wouldn't. He would have to have a little dark side to him, but just to keep him real. That's why Superman, again, I hope some of the rust of Superman kind of came through, some of the speckle. The whole universe, the monitor world, it started raining blood. It started raining. The sky was red, and what was pictured before was a beautiful universe that no longer exists, a beautiful world that no longer exists because of images that, they opened Pandora's box, and now there's nothing but pain for that society. And Superman was a statue of their hope and their ultimate one, that they know of this one person that is so amazing that they put into the statue that one day when they absolutely need it, it will come to life. And that's what this Superman was. This Superman was their ultimate hero, but not only their ultimate hero, the universe's and all the universe's ultimate hero. The one of the one is, because with all the different Supermen in the book, they all had their purpose. But our Superman in our world is the one that held the glue together. Without this one, the one true, pure, good Superman, things couldn't happen. And I just, again, as much as I was lucky to be a part of this book, I was lucky that we had previous relationships with Doug, that, we were so familiar with each other that they said, we need you on this book. We'd love to have you on this book. And that Grant felt so passionately to make a Superman book that was going to blow people's minds away. I'm going to tell a Superman story that has not been told. And as we discussed with the 4D part of the book, he did accomplish it. And the feeling that you were Superman is a feeling that not every Superman book can claim to say it has happened.
It really was just a special issue for me, special 2 issues for me, in the sense that it really did add to the whole thing with Lois and what was going on with her as well, that was blanketing this whole thing. Because you go back to Lois, and there's such soft tones there, just showing at his human side at that point,
okay.
And just that romance between the two. And it was funny, just framed in there was such a dark vision with Mondrak and what was going on there. To see that contrast of him in that moment with Lois, it was a very soft moment in a book that was featured a very dark, because he was really fighting like one of the ultimate evils at that point.
Right.
And I really like just the various contrasts that were laid out in this book. I thought just really worked for me. That tender moment where he kissed Lois was a very nice, pleasant visual that I think worked so well contrasting what was going on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, just saying, things like that inspire you. And that's why I think Grant and Doug, were a huge success on this project, because reading a Superman book like this, it makes you, again, want to be him. I mean, I was a fan of Superman Returns. I know not everyone was, but I think a lot of people were.
Oh, yeah, because we definitely were.
Yeah, but when he re-put down, the helicopter inside the or not helicopter, what am I saying, the airplane in the stadium, saved Lois again, it just reawoken our senses of how amazing that this character is. And watching him is awe-inspiring. If you could be him for a day, what would you do? And then what this book kind of says is that if you could be Superman for a day, you wouldn't do what he did. And that's, again, what puts him on another shelf. That, yes, you might say you would go and, fight ultimate evil, but the truth is he's laying his life on the line. And, time and time again, he keeps doing that. And, again, for if you're stumbling on this podcast and we might sound like people that don't know real from fake, I understand that Superman is, a character, but at the same time, understanding that not everyone puts in this situation, that he's truly being selfless, that he's thinking about not only people he loves, but people that he doesn't know about, worlds. It's just one of those awe-inspiring things that if you could do that, would you? And if you could do that, how much would you do, before you took something back? And it's just, there's just so much involved to the character that it's hard to write a story for Superman on an epic level. And I think this book, when you really reread and reread, or even read once and really, look at it, it kind of goes on that level of something that's just epic. And, again, a pleasure to be a part of.
Good, solid, strong, excellent escapist fiction has elements that are grounded in reality, but also has elements that are grounded in the ideals of what we want reality to be. And that's what Superman is, in the sense that he becomes real to us because it's something we all want to. We hope on some level we can aspire to some of the qualities of this man in the best of the Superman stories. And
I don't care what you all say. It's still real to me, man. It's still real to me.
Well, I mean, the whole ending of the book is the universe is just comic book pages, so it's a little bit more cookies, carrots for the book. On the opening sequence, when Clark is first by Lois' side and starts walking away to become Superman, kisses her goodbye, takes off his shirt, and now he's Superman. He's walking through the next page, and they're going to the ship. All that bubbly goo, we turn into universe. And I don't know if you can really see it in the printing, but that was meant to feel like a space galaxy type of goo coming out of the walls. So I just think that's a kind of an interesting little element in issue 1. And then on issue 2, when the two Supermans collide and there's kind of like that big bang happening, that was a lot of work on my part that I hope someone will stare at for a little bit more than 2 seconds. And I'm just saying that because I think that was my first big bang I've ever created. And it was very interesting to take something that Doug envisioned in black and white and create it in full color without kind of taking away what he has done. And I think that happens a lot in comics, where two ideas not clash but mesh together to really make something that's very not significant but very interesting. And I know Alex Sinclair, a colorist, again, does a lot of interesting things for Jim Lee's artwork that maybe people don't understand. That's like 100% all Alex Sinclair. And it's just so if you again, that's issue 2, and if you just take a look, you might see more layers in there than you realize. There's colorists have been known to hide things in the clouds. Not that they're saying there's anything hidden in there, But, you just never know.
I'm looking at it right now. It's beautiful.
It was definitely interesting.
Little tiny details of... I'm just looking at it's almost little cosmic things that are surrounding it that are just... It's a breathtaking visual. And you're right. It's something that almost needs to be looked at in multiple viewings to kind of catch every little nuance of it.
Sometimes on a bigger scale. And again, I'm not trying to point out my work, some things that I added. The cover to number 2, of that issue is more of an example of sometimes what colors throw in as that whole, the only line art Superman, that whole background is just, something I came up with for him and thought, hey, what do you think? And luckily they liked it. Sometimes, like on issue 1, the Earths, those Earths are something that I created. They were not there in the artwork. It was just Superman. And so sometimes you don't even realize, what gets added where by the colorist. And that's, I think, a sign that the colorists kind of did their job, where you don't really notice that something was added by the colorist. Whenever you can kind of tell that something was added, usually it's not flowing very well with the artwork. I think Doug's an amazing artist, and I think there's a lot of hidden detail in Doug's artwork that if you read it once for the story, you look through it again slowly at the art to really start appreciating it. And then to give some more credit where credit's due, I don't know if people realize this because it's being used all over the place in the DCU and Wildstorm U. I haven't seen it anywhere else in comics, thankfully, because it's copyrighted. But Laura Dupuy, again, now Laura Martin, she created the bleed effect with Photoshop and some other techniques, and that's used everywhere throughout this issue. So some of the effects that I created would not have been possible without her creativity and artistic ability. So I just want to say that again. So if you ever see the bleed effect everywhere from Authority in the DCU, that file is passed around, compliments of Laura, and also the door effect in Authority was also created by her, and again is used on every Authority issue because Laura was gracious enough to let other colorists use that file. So another little cookie.
Which keeps consistency then for longtime fans who read the original Authority. There still is that connection that's there.
Right. And then it doesn't mean that, if an artist doesn't want to recreate one for their own style, it's not the worst thing. I think Brian Stelfreeze did the only change to the door, and what he did in his coloring job over I think it was Cully Hamner in a Authority special issue, is he changed it from the bright yellow to a blue, like just to fit the mood of the page. And that's, at that point, has never been done before. Most people just keep it, the bright yellow. So yeah, but again, if it wasn't for Laura's, I don't know what the proper word would be, but just the willingness to share her creativity for others. Because, I think on a side note, it would be weird to see your artwork used with other people's credits. Like, so if you created something and everybody used it without people ever knowing that you're the one who created it, it would sometimes possibly, rub people wrong. So I want people to know out there that, there's definitely other people creating things. And if you're a fan of the bleed effect and the door, that was both used in the Authority, those were all created by Laura. So it's
cool. I love little tidbits like that. I want to thank you wholeheartedly.
Oh yeah, big time.
I know you said you set aside the time tonight for us, but I never intended to keep you for this amount of time. This has been an incredibly interesting experience for me to be able to chat with you in detail about these books. I'm glad that we had an opportunity to give all of them and your career time, because I think the tangents that we went off on and how they bled back into the books, to use the bleed analogy again, I think it worked really well. I can't thank you enough.
Well, it was my pleasure, and again, thank you for having me on the show for especially the 150th milestone. Here's to another 150.
Yeah, I appreciate it. David, are there any websites or anything that you want to shout out or anything that you want me to put into the show notes for this episode?
I think we should, maybe we have to, give homage to Alan Pastelacco again at angryf.com. Fan of charity, so if you could just say, David would like you to check out maybe the Legal Defense Fund. You guys know that website?
Oh, yes.
They talked about really needing money. They're actually, not necessarily going to go under, but they don't have very much money right now. So if anybody wants to donate to that, that'd be kind of cool.
I will definitely put that in the show notes because that's a wonderful cause, and that's a great way to point people. So
if some young talent gets forced out, we may never have another Jim Lee.
Jimmy, hole in a donut.
Before we kick into this conversation, we have to do a quick spoiler addendum. When Jim and I were chit-chatting, we started talking about things. We got excited, and we started talking about things that happened in Action Comics 874, Superman 685, Supergirl number 38, and JSA 24. So if you haven't read those issues, they're basically the issues of those titles that were released in February. If you haven't read those yet, this does have some spoilers about that, where we talk about events that have spun out of those issues, because there's some news coming out of these different conventions that we're going to be chatting about, and I want to definitely put a spoiler warning on this so we don't ruin that for any of you. But we couldn't help ourselves.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where we just started talking, and we just kept going, and then we're like, ooh, let's do a quick addendum.
Yeah, because we wanted to chat about that. So this spoiler warning's on there just to let you know that these things are on there, and we don't want to ruin that for you. If so, you might want to skip this segment, this little half-hour segment, and just jump on to other topics at this point. Jim, I want to casually talk about, we weren't at the WonderCon or MegaCon, but the news has been up. We actually went to newsarama.com and got to follow what was going on at the various DC panels. And there were some tidbits on there that I thought were very interesting that I wanted to talk about right away. So we won't go through every little bit of news that came out of there, but Batman especially, because with the announcement of the new books that are coming out, I'm wondering who is going to be writing them. They said Paul Dini, for example, was going to be coming back, but as of New York, we didn't know. Now we know that Paul Dini is going to write both Batman Streets of Gotham, which is the street-level Gotham book, and we're going to be seeing Gotham City Sirens from him, which I'm really excited about. Paul Dini. He's going to be writing Harley Quinn again, though, which is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and Poison Ivy. He's got Poison Ivy in there. And I like the one comment that he made, how this isn't going to be a humor book.
Right.
We're going to see, maybe a little bit different take on it. Yeah, it's still going to be Harley, but we're going to see her a little bit different. So I'm kind of very curious to see what he's going to do with these characters. Because, it could very easily end up being a cheesy title, if you let it. This is going to be a little bit darker. They're going to be reacting to the circumstances around them where Batman is not there. Batman's no longer a presence, and who knows how that'll affect these characters as well.
Well, they said they're thrust together out of necessity and self-preservation, which sounds it's going to be great. Those are awesome characters to put together because they're all very unique and different in their own way. But Ivy and Harley together have always been such a fun team-up.
Yeah.
And now to have them put together with Catwoman, I think it's just going to be a great ride. Even though it's not a humor book, I just think those characters and that dynamic are going to be a fun read. Also, Judd Winnick on the solo Batman title, which I don't know how you're taking this. That would lead me to believe that the new Batman and Robin title that's been announced is going to be Grant Morrison, right?
I'm hoping, because especially if who we think is going to be Batman and Robin in that, I would love to see Grant Morrison continue on with that, because he introduced Damian. Because we're both of the mindset that the Batman and Robin will be Dick Grayson as Batman and Damian as Robin. With
and then Red Hood is going to be Tim Drake. Tim Wayne.
Yeah, Tim Wayne, Tim Drake, however you want to refer to him. That's how I think we're both in agreement on
that's
this.
Speculation.
Yeah, complete speculation on our part, but it would make sense for me to do that. I don't see, Jason Todd going over to Red Hood.
I don't see Jason Todd being given his own title.
Right.
Now, the right creator could make an interesting title.
The right creator could make it outstanding, and they could even do a flip-flop, but I don't think they're going to take away a title from Tim because he's been doing such a solid stand-up job, and it makes sense, the evolution of the character, especially what we saw in in issue 183, which we're going to talk about next week. So it's
Tim's got to have his own book, so I'm taking that to be Red Robin because I don't see him being Batman.
Yeah, and it was funny. I liked that Winnick is able to make fun of himself, and just he was able to be a little bit tongue in cheek about the animosity he has going towards him. And it was at the DC Universe panel where he just kind of basically called out the audience, saying, yeah, I know there's a lot of people out there who don't like me, who think I completely just do my own thing, and he's kind of like sarcastically listed his own agenda and his own book titles he's going to be doing. And the list of the titles were Batman and Robin fully explore their relationship. Blue Beetle returns from the dead. Jason Todd, dead again. Jason Todd, alive again. Barbara Gordon walks again. Barbara Gordon loses her use of her legs, and Batwoman becomes a permanent guest. And of course, there's Bruce Wayne is elected to mayor of Gotham City, outlaws heterosexual marriage, in a storyline called Judd Winnick wins another GLAAD award. I cheered when I read it. I'm like, outstanding, dude.
For people that are worried about him on Batman, please read Under the Hood.
Yeah.
It's collected in 2 trades. And I like what he does on Batman. He said that his is going to be the solo title, more introspective on Batman, where Batman and Robin obviously is going to be the book where we see the two of them together. I like that they're doing 2 books where we're going to see a lot of Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
Because I do like those stories where we get to see the two together and the team dynamic. But the solo book as well is be nice, because I do like to get, whoever this new Batman's going to be, to get into the head of Batman.
And once again, if we are correct on our assumption, and it is Dick Grayson, I'm just thinking back to his run on Outsiders. That cool Nightwing that he wrote in Outsiders. If it is, Dick in the costume, that'll be kind of really cool, because we've seen what he can do with that character. We read really cool Batman story, and I'm definitely looking forward to this.
Yeah, I like Winnick's stuff, so I'm again, Under the Hood is the point that I'll reference and say, if you're worried about this at all, read Under the Hood. And I think you'll feel a lot more confident in his work on Bat titles and what he's capable of doing with these characters. And Outsiders, you're right. That's another great point, though. Outsiders really, realistically, is sort of a pseudo-Bat title as well, and his work on there. So I'm excited for Winnick coming back to these books.
Yeah, I am too.
Manhunter is going to be the DA of Gotham City. I like that, because Kate Spencer, I was worried about where she's going to wind up, and with this dynamic going on, are we under the assumption that Bruce is definitely not back, right?
I'm assuming.
At the end of Battle for the Cowl, there's going to be a new Batman. Is that what you're thinking? Because that's my spec. At this
my
point,
assumption
I'm convinced.
now is that
okay.
Bruce will not be back after Battle for the Cowl. A long time ago, I was thinking he was going to be.
So did I, yeah.
And I was thinking like the ending of Battle for the Cowl would be Bruce returning. But now I'm like, no, I think we're going to have a period where Dick Grayson, and it's, as I said, that's my belief, who's going to win the Cowl is going to be Dick Grayson, and he's going to be Batman. And
I'm wondering if we're not going to have more than one Batman, though. And if we might have a different, like, the main Batman would be Dick Grayson, but there might be somebody else running around in costume as well. I don't know.
I think we're going to have that during Battle for the Cowl. Actually. I think when everything is said and done, there can be only one.
So it's a Highlander thing, huh?
Yes.
The head chopping and stuff, too, as well.
That'd be kind of cool. I'd like to see that, There can be only one. Here we are. Okay, sorry. I won't sing.
Really? That's a switch.
I caught myself. I started going into the Highlander theme.
You weren't gonna try Queen, were you?
I love Queen,
I do
but
too,
there's no way I can do that. I can do that.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah. A man's got to know his limitations, man. I know mine.
Doom Patrol. This is a book we haven't talked about. Keith Giffen, Doom Patrol, with the backup of the Metal Men. It sounds like that Doom Patrol is going to be more of a horror title.
Yeah.
Which I'm really excited about. But then in the back, it's going to be J.M. DeMatteis is joining Keith Giffen with Kevin Maguire illustrating the backup. So it's going to be a fun, wacky Metal Men in the back. That book, I've been talking about how I would love an anthology book. This is a great book, and this is an ongoing series. It's not a mini-series. This is exactly what I've been clamoring for, and I'm getting it.
They're giving it a try. I like that. The fact that they're going to do this, and we're going to see what we get. And I like, whenever they were talking about Doom Patrol, they were saying that, this isn't going to be the previous Doom Patrols you've seen. This is going to be very reader-accessible right now. Person picking up won't need to know the past history. Yeah, the professor's going to be there, and I'm assuming some of the staples are going to be there, but these characters, they're not going to say that the previous adventures didn't happen, but you don't need to know the previous adventures. This is, Giffen's take on the characters. As you said, it's going to be maybe a little bit more creepy, a little bit more horror genre type. So I'm definitely going, I got to pick this thing up just to see what happens, because, it should be a pretty cool and fun ride.
The question was brought up at the con. What did the Omega sanction actually do to Batman? And Sattler said, more questions and more answers will be revealed coming up later this year. If we just said this is what happened, it kind of takes the fun away. And it's a good point. Like, I don't want to know right now. I want to read it. So I would rather them tell me, like, you're going to see it on the page. That's enough for me. I mean, that to me is a great answer to that question. You're going to get to read it. Because I want to experience it with Bruce. That was half the fun of R.I.P. for me, was to go through R.I.P. with him and then have him slap me in the face and say, dude, I had this plan taken care of all along. I like that about those journeys, so I'm looking forward to that.
And another question they asked was about Ra's al Ghul. Mm-hmm. And they said, will we see him be appearing anytime soon? And they said, along with family. So that definitely, for me, these are all just little, extra stuff with Talia and also with Damian. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, he's got to be the new Robin. The more and more evidence I'm getting, the more and more I'm getting locked into this. So granted, they could do a complete spin on me, and I have not seen it coming in somebody else, and I'm thinking, okay, let's see what happens here. But right now, I'm so mindset locked that I don't see anything else going.
They talked about the Daily Planet talking about Superman for a little bit. Will it collapse like every other American newspaper? And Robinson said, that's interesting because you're going to see the return of Morgan Edge, so there may be something with television. So that's interesting that they're going to... I just read that Superman story with the Kryptonite Nevermore. Did you read that yet? Did you get that?
I got it. I just haven't had a chance to sit down and read it yet.
Yeah, I read that cover to cover. It's really good. Really good. And Morgan Edge was a big factor in that, and Morgan Edge also played out in the Fourth World omnibuses. So it'll be interesting to see that character come back and be brought in and see how he works in today's dynamic.
Yeah. And it was a lot of talk on Superman, and I liked when they were talking about the Guardian. Because you had the two different Guardians, and why did they go with the Jim Harper Guardian as compared to the previous versions? And I like the answer they gave, that he's more kind of connected to Metropolis, and he has more of the history with Metropolis, more of a reason for him to be there and whatnot. But I also like the fact they were talking about he's going to be exploring the nature of a clone, and even talking about his clone daughter that he has. And that got me thinking back. If you remember from the New York Con, they said we're going to explore whether a clone has a soul. And I immediately assumed it has to be, Connor. Well, now I'm like, maybe they're talking about this and not Connor. So now I'm like, my whole thought process that I was locked into place, that Connor's coming back. We're going to see if he has a soul and all this. And through Blackest Night, I have this huge storyline played out in my head. Is now there's a big question mark sitting over that storyline. So I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with, guys like Guardian, and what they're going to do with Steel and Mon-El and just all these different characters they're bringing into the Superman universe.
And then Black Lightning and Zatara.
Yeah.
Like the Robinson's describing him as a little S.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun to see him back in that book. Supergirl's been a book that... Supergirl, I literally, when it comes out, it's a book that I pick up now, and it's a top-of-the-stack book. Which before Supergirl for me fell to the middle, to the lower stack book, I always read it. I always liked the character. I was enjoying her journey, but it wasn't a book that it was kind of one of those that it wouldn't be odd for Supergirl to wind up like I'd stockpile 2 or 3 issues before I read it. Now, though, I read it every month when it comes out, and I'm glued to that book. The artwork is gorgeous. The story's great. I'm loving her whole turmoil with her mom, and
and just the inner term that she's dealing with the Kryptonians. What's her role? Can she be secret on Earth? Because right now on Earth, the only Kryptonian allowed is Superman. Right. So if she makes an appearance on Earth, it's got to be in secret. So how will she deal with that?
Well, I don't think it's an appearance on Earth. Did you read the most recent issue?
Which one?
Supergirl.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to see her with an appearance on her.
Yeah.
But I think that you're talking about, and that's that dynamic of Supergirl being on Earth and having to deal with the fact that Kryptonians, except for Superman, have been banned. And the media made it a point to say, the government, I should say, made it a point to say, all Kryptonians are banned except for Superman. So what does that mean for her and her operation? Her secret identity is almost crucial at this point for her to have any kind of semblance of a life on Earth, to be able to have the secret identity in that as well. So it's going to be fun to read that story. It also gives Cat Grant a lot of ammo.
Yeah, and that whole dynamic we're going to see between those two, with just the, of course, as we said, with Mon-El, what's going to happen there. There's so much going on there. I'm eagerly anticipating. I just want to, I'm like, come on, get it started. I want to read. And, it's kind of the excitement level is, really up there for Superman. And that's a cool thing, considering this is your, one of the flagship titles. And everyone, there was a lot of negative press. People were talking about Superman's not going to be on Earth. What's going to happen? He's not going to be the main character in his title for a whole year. Come on, what are you doing? And they're getting me excited, just throwing out all these possible stories and all these different events. And, they kept repeating it over and over again in New York, where they said, Superman's not going to be there, but his presence will be felt. And we're seeing that in these characters, because I know there's going to be comparisons being made to the people who are currently the Guardians of Metropolis. Well, if Superman was here, maybe he would do it differently.
Well, we got to just talk about it. I'm going to put in the show notes that we're talking about Action Comics and Superman right now, because I can't hold this in.
Okay.
We got to talk about the moments with Clark and Lois, where Clark was now making his decision, and he really went to Lois and his mom, and I loved how they split screen that so we could kind of see both characters and the emotional reaction there. He was going to them. He knew what he needed to do, yet these were the two people that would be most affected by his decision, the two closest to him, his wife and his mother.
Yeah.
And I loved the fact that they both said, you know what you need to do, and I love that he's going there to make them think he's planning on denouncing Earth and becoming Kryptonian, but he's really going there with the intention of coming back.
And he's got to save them and help them, and also I think the whole Zod thing is going on. I
love that.
At the con, they had the animation, kind of flash animation type of trailers for the World of Krypton coming out. And it really was just, kind of a thing. I was like, I'm watching this on, I saw it at Newsarama. And just going through it, I was like, man, this is cool, because they're like doing the announcement, and it's like, and we are Krypton, we are reborn, we are coming stronger, Zod and Zod, and then people are chanting Zod, and I'm just like, oh man, Zod's not just a general. Zod is taking over Krypton. Zod is going to be calling the shots on that planet. So now Clark is going to be there with Zod, and that was even something he brought up when he was talking to Lois, like, they think they can trust him. They can't. I got to go there and protect them from Zod. And that is something I am just really looking forward to seeing, the Zod, Kal-El clash.
The stuff with Mon-El was interesting, because Mon-El isn't supposed to know about the Legion yet they left something there to allow him to deal with his lead issues.
Yeah.
And they left him a serum that he was able to drink and take care of that. But Clark said, what happens if Mon-El realizes now that the Legion is in the future? Well, how does that change the future? And also the fact that he could not tap into that flight ring and go to the future. What's going on with the future is a big concern with him. I like that right now we don't know what's going on with the future because of the Legion of Three Worlds storyline.
Right.
So why would Clark be able to tap into that? It's right now in turmoil. What is going to happen? Nothing's been laid out or dealt with yet. I liked that little twist in the whole thing. Mon-El taking on the name of Jonathan Kent. What did you think about that?
Wow, that really... Because I was trying to figure out what name they would go with, and then once they were saying he was going to say he's from England, I was thinking maybe Montgomery, Kent or something like that, something proper, and when he went to Ma and he was talking to Ma about it, she's like, well, there's a name that's not currently being used that I think would work, a proper name would work for you, and just next time you see him introduce himself as Jonathan Kent, I was like, wow, that is huge.
Back to Supergirl again, because as long as I'll put these in the
let's
the beginning. Superwoman, not Kryptonian.
No. Dude, I will fully admit I didn't see that coming until she went after. Once she went after, the Kryptonite guy, and he blasted her. Nothing happened. She's like, "Who said I was Kryptonian?" I honestly put down the book and cheered, dude. Yeah. I was like, "Yes!" Did not see that one coming.
Do you think does this add more fuel to the fire that she might be Lucy Lane?
That's my guess now. Yeah. I will back that 100%. That it's the Everyman Project. We've seen they were able to reproduce Superman's skills because Lex had them, so it's got to be Lucy.
Oh, so you think this is spinning out of Everyman?
Yeah, I think because we saw he was able to do it. The only thing is that the Everyman Project has a weakness that it can be shut down. Mm-hmm. Well, as long as no one knows she's an Everyman, they won't know to try to shut her down.
Could Nightwing and Flamebird be constructed from the same?
Yes, I think so.
I don't think they're Kryptonians. I really don't.
I'm now thinking they are Everyman projects as well. I don't know which people though. That's the question. I don't know who they are, and I think these maybe are actually people from Infinity Inc. Maybe that's what I was starting to think.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But whatever there are, I don't know if their powers came from the same place as Superwoman. But I agree with you. It would make sense. There might be a tie there, but. I'm clearly convinced that these are three people. All three of them are not Kryptonians. I've always felt that Nightwing and Flamebird were not Kryptonian. So, and I do believe there's a possibility their powers are artificially. It's interesting. I'm really curious to see who's who now. I was thinking, and I mentioned this previously, Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon, but I'm so convinced right now that Dick Grayson's going to be Batman that I don't think that's a possibility.
Yeah, I am. I'm backing you. I don't think it's them either.
And Barbara Gordon has to. If Dick Grayson is staying, Barbara Gordon would not be there with somebody else. I'm convinced that it has to be. I'm so into this right now. I don't want to know at the moment. I'm enjoying trying to figure out the mystery as I go along. So it's not even that I want a definitive answer at this point. I want to enjoy this ride. The Power Girl series is something that I'm really, really excited about. There's some humor in it, but it's not going to be a comedy book. So I'm excited for that, to see that. The artwork is going to be great, because I love what Amanda Conner does with Power Girl.
Yeah,
Tara was a nice
Tara miniseries, and I think we're going to see Tara, that was introduced in the miniseries, in the Power Girl series, because you kind of saw the connection already. So I can see her continuing on and sticking around.
I need books like Power Girl and Vigilante with newer characters in my mix, as well as the older classic characters. They're really important to me to have these new characters to kind of be on the launching point with them as they go through. I'm glad to see Kate Spencer and the Blue Beetle are winding up in titles where they're going to be featured. It looks like Kate Spencer, as the DA of Gotham, she's going to be featured prominently in multiple titles, I would assume. And to know that we're going to get the same thing with Blue Beetle continuing in Teen Titans, that's really important to me. These are characters who I've become very attached to, and I need those characters. Interesting. Can we talk about The Flash for a little bit? I know, and we don't have to go spoiler into this whole thing. There was interesting discussion on the forum about classic characters coming back, and what does that mean for the newer characters, and that it becomes an interesting issue. For me, I think our Flash is two different people, if I remember correctly. Who your Flash is?
My Flash is Bart. Okay. That's my Flash.
So that's the one you were when that run hit. That's when you became attached. Because were you reading any Wally stuff prior to that?
I did not read a single Wally or Barry thing before that.
Okay.
I knew that Wally West was the Flash, and I had read the Identity Crisis and the Infinite Crisis, where Wally disappeared, and then and actually Bart too. But so I read those, but it's not. I didn't have any connection or association with him. Okay. Bart is my Flash.
And Wally, I have such a rich history with him. I started with on Wade's run, and we did Born to Run on the show. I had read Wade's entire run, then on through Grant Morrison and Jeff Johns, writing Wally, some stellar material, which it's going to be nice next week to talk about some of Jeff Johns' work on the Flash. So we can talk about what that was like for you and for Mike Sims. So we'll be recording that in a few minutes as of where we're at right now. Yeah. But it's an interesting point to talk about that. Now, how do you feel? I guess we haven't had a chance to really address this in a while. Now that we're getting closer to Barry coming back, it's been solicited, Rebirth. Are you excited for that? Are you concerned about that? Where are you at? For me, I'm excited because it's Jeff Johns, and I got to see how he's handled Kyle, John Stewart, got, not just him, I'm talking about Peter Tomasi as well, between the 2 Green Lantern books. I'm assuming we're going to get a Flash title out of this. Are you excited to see what's going to be done with Barry Allen? Did you wish it would be another Flash? Where are you at?
No, I'm definitely excited to see it because, for a lot of stuff you said with, this is Jeff Johns we're talking about. Mm-hmm. He knows how to handle these, multi-generational, multi-legacy characters. I see the book going to come out is more of a Flash universe type thing. Mm-hmm. And on multiple panels and discussions and interviews and whatnot, we've seen questions asked about, is Wally going to be around? Is Bart going to be around? And every single time they're asked, they say, yes, these characters are going to be in the Flash universe. But I'm seeing the primary focus will be Barry, but it will be Barry.
I'm thinking Barry and Bart.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking Bart is going to be featured prominently in this book as his sidekick.
I think so. I think Bart's good, and that's for me. As I said, Bart was my Flash, so it's in a way. Yes, he was an adult. Did they take it away from him? Was it taken away from him for storyline or because he wasn't a popular Flash? I lean now towards for storyline purposes. When it first happened, I will fully admit I thought it was solely because Bart wasn't a popular Flash that they did all this stuff to him. Now I see that it is storyline driven, and I'm really curious to see how Johns deals with Bart, because Bart went from being the Flash to Kid Flash now. He was adult and he de-aged again. And that's going to be a huge thing for him to deal with. There's going to be a lot of stuff that, he grew older, then younger, older, young. He's flip-flopping back and forth. How old is Bart? Yes, his appearance is of a kid, but he's got, 25, 30 years of life experience under his belt. So who is he?
Does he know about that? I'm hoping he does.
Yeah, I'm assuming right now he does. So that's going to be a huge inner dynamic going on between, Bart and Barry. And then with Wally going to be making appearances in the DC universe, in the Flash titles.
And obviously in the Titans.
And I think Titans and JLA. I think those are going to be his 2 primary books that he's going to be seen in.
You don't think Barry's going to go to JLA?
No. I think Wally's going to be JLA.
Okay. That's interesting.
And maybe Barry appearing in the other Justice League Strike Force team.
Did you read the Titans issue, the most recent one with the Origin and Omens in the back, where Wally was looking at his costume as far as whether or not, probably trying to make the decision whether or not he was going to be Flash? It's interesting to... Yeah,
that's going to be a neat little kind of quandary he's in.
Sure.
With Bart and Barry, do they really need him as a Flash? Can he live a normal life?
And maybe we'll see, though, Wally learning why he's still needed and what his purpose is and what he's going to be doing. And that's an important story to be told for me, because I'm a Wally fan. I need to see Wally as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the Flash book, but I did see him elsewhere. And honestly, the one advantage of that, to me, and what I would see, is that it does give then Winnick on Titans the freedom then to do a lot with Wally, development-wise, if Wally's making appearances in Flash, but he's more prominent in Titans. In the sense you can really play around with, because that means he's got a cast in Titans that is almost exclusively in Titans, with the exception of then Red Arrow, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Because Donna makes appearances in Wonder Woman, but she's not...
Yeah, and Nightwing's not...
Nightwing's left.
Nightwing's left Titans, so yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting to see, very similar to what what Tim Drake had to do in Teen Titans, Dick Grayson had to do in Titans, because of everything, all the turmoil going on in Gotham.
He's needed there, right. So yeah.
It's interesting. So it does give that writer then freedom, and we've seen the advantage of that from McKeever with his team of characters, the fact that they're all featured pretty exclusively in his book as well, that gives him a lot of freedom to play around with their relationships and their MOs and things. So I'm hoping that we'll get to see a little bit more construction of Wally in the Titans book then. That'll be a fun read. It's interesting. I want to make one addendum to what you said. You said that Bart Allen, because of sales, you don't think it was because of sales, you think it was because of story, and I totally agree with you on that. I do think the plan was always for Bart's run to be limited, and because DC said that multiple times, that was their plan. I will say this, though, and I'll make a little addendum on that. If the sales had been through the roof of that book, I think there might have been a change, though, and Bart would still be Flash.
Definitely.
That's where money would have changed the story.
Yeah, if something's doing really good, it can always save a book,
right?
And I think save a character and change the story. If if what you got going down is working, they're going to continue with it, and shifted things around a little bit.
So I do think that they planned it as being a temporary journey. I don't think they were lying on that. I think that's totally the truth. But I do think, and they would have been stupid not to. It didn't have the stellar sales, though. It was losing sales, and it was just it didn't work. I liked it. You liked it. So I'm not saying anything negative about it. We enjoyed the book. It just, the concept didn't work. Unfortunately, the same thing can be said about a run that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed when Wally came back to the book. I enjoyed the family and that exploration. But, sales-wise, it wasn't a major hit right now. So this Barry thing is coming at a really good time for them, in the sense that it'll drum up some excitement for the Flash concept and, hopefully these characters. I'm hoping that eventually we get a second Flash book.
Yeah, I would love that.
Because there's a lot of Flash characters, like Max Mercury and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a huge family that they could do, a whole Flash universe out there in on itself.
But they also could be, you could tell stories of the Flash throughout time. Like Max Mercury and these characters like that don't necessarily have to all be in our time frame. You could bring in XS from the Legion and, do stuff with her in the future. And there's lots of different ways you could do things with the Flash that you aren't doing with any other book, because of the fact that these characters some of them are in different timelines, like XS, for example.
Yeah.
So to see what she does in the future. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what'll happen with that. But I'm Flash happy at the moment. Was there anything else from the con panels that really stood out for you as things that you thought were interesting, Jim?
Yeah, actually, there were two things that I thought was kind of cool. They had a Watchmen panel where they had a lot of the cast and cast and crew and whatnot on the panel, and they're asking questions. And for me, one of the things that came out is they're kind of explaining a little bit in Watchmen how it's going to be taking place kind of like a Depression era films, and you're going to get more movie for your money. And this was something I was really glad to hear, that the film runtime is about 40 minutes longer than originally intended.
Wow.
Because I was worried, because I kept hearing stuff, they're cutting, and now we hear finally it's 40 minutes longer than what the original plan was. So that's always more, bang for the buck. And of course, they also said that there'll be of course the theater version there's a lot of cut sequences from that, and you usually get your director's cut when it comes out with the special edition. But they're going to do a theater re-release of the director's cut in July. So I guess it's going to be on the big screen, the director's cut version, and it's going to run 3 hours, 10 minutes in the theater. So, but that's, a couple months from now. So I really liked when they did that.
Why aren't they just releasing it that way?
You know what? And that was my first thought when I read that, but then I realized, there are a lot of people who haven't read Watchmen, who wouldn't sit around for 3 hours and 10 minutes if they don't know that it's just going to be this epic event.
You think it might be a deterrent?
Right. So they're releasing this a shorter version, which is still going to be long by movie standards, it sounds like.
Well,
but
some of the threads, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off there, but some of the threads that are probably in the director's cuts are things that they didn't flesh out because of the fact that they didn't shoot enough of the footage, they didn't go enough in that direction. They felt that it makes for a better movie experience to not have those bits in there, but then to re-release. I guess I'm kind of answering my own question.
Yeah, you're answering your own question, so why even ask me?
Well, no, the honest answer is because as a fan, I want to see as much Watchmen as they can give me on the big screen, but I've got to keep in mind also that there is a larger audience that's probably never experienced Watchmen before, and you need to give them a good movie. And honestly, have you seen any of the reviews online so far from people that have previewed it already and seen it?
Yeah.
It's getting some great reviews. So I'm really excited.
Kevin Smith raved about it. So once I read that actually kind of okay, this gets me excited now. Well, I was excited before, but that did, really... Because he's not going to say something's good if it's not something he enjoys. And... usually something he says is good and I watch it is something I enjoy. So he's got the right, fanboy mentality. But also he's the professional where he's read the original work. He's seen what's out there. So it was definitely that was a really shining praise for me. And another thing I came across was they talked about the fifth entry in the straight-to-DVD animated from DC, and it's going to be Green Lantern, First Flight.
Absolutely.
Oh, bringing back, Bruce Timm is going to be produced by Laura Montgomery, who was the director for Wonder Woman, and Doomsday has got the director helm. Alan Burnett, who's worked on the Batman, is scripting it, and it was some really cool stuff. It's Hal Jordan's first mission, if you will. And he's, recruited into the Corps. He's just learning what he's doing, and he's with his mentor, Sinestro, and he starts to discover what Sinestro is doing. And he's got to knuckle up and take down one of the Corps' number one Green Lantern. It sounds like this is going to be the fight between Sinestro and Hal Jordan when Hal's is a rookie. And I was like, damn, that's okay. I'm glad they're going to show. There'll probably be a flash of him getting the ring, maybe even seeing a couple sequences of it, but it's mostly going to be, sounds like, him off-world and him dealing with Sinestro and dealing with the Corps. And I read a couple of the name voicings they're going to do. Michael Madsen, who is doing Kilowog. And I saw that and I was like, yes, he's just got that great voice that's going to, do some really good job with that. And was it Christopher Melanomi from Law & Order Special Victims Unit is going to be voicing Hal. So I'm like, there should be some, pretty good stuff going on. And I'm not sure who, Victor Garber. He was in Milk and Titanic. He's doing the voice of Sinestro. And I haven't seen
Milk yet, but I wanted. My wife and I have been talking about going to see that one.
Yeah, so I haven't had a chance to actually look him up because I just
saw
these things now. And Tricia Helfner from Battlestar Galactica.
Helfer.
What?
Helfer.
Thank you. From Battlestar Galactica is doing the voice of what? Yeah. Boudica. So.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, those are the only voices I could find. So
no,
far.
That's fine.
But,
I'm actually really excited for that one. So thanks for bringing that one up. I want to talk about one little thing from the panels too that they hinted at. They didn't confirm anything, but the question was asked: are we going to see the return of the Wizard Shazam? And are you current on JSA?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
I think we already sort of are seeing hints of that being a possibility in that book right now. Let's talk a little bit about that right now. Billy Batson's dad making an appearance and stuff like that. Oh, I really like. And Mary, we're going to get a dealing with Mary as. Do you think? Did you take it that Desaad's still in there?
See, that one really threw me because if that was the Mary Desaad, then this means this whole story arc took place after Final Crisis. And they even mentioned the war with Darkseid. Now, where exactly did the Gog story arc fit in? Because I read it that it went Gog right into this directly, no break between them. Because you think about it, in Final Crisis, we're both thinking Hawkman's dead. Well, Hawkman's a predominant in Gog. So if Gog took place after Final Crisis, then what the heck? Or if Final Crisis took place in between Gog and the beginning of the Black Adam story arc. I don't know.
All it's important to me to know right now, I mean, I'm with you. I don't know exactly where it fits, so I'm going to say that right now. I'm not saying that. The most important thing for me to know right now is, though, this takes place after Final Crisis for Mary. And that's really the only character that is drastically affected by the events of Final Crisis would be Mary. I'm glad that this story is being told because I want some resolution to Mary. I need resolution to Mary.
Yes.
And the whole Batson family in general. So I guess, and you might disagree with me, and that's fine. I don't really care where Final Crisis fits in because it doesn't really matter for JSA, other than the fact that for us to know right now that this takes place after Final Crisis. So, I mean, that's kind of where my head's at the moment for that, I would have to go back and reread the issues to try and find a specific point where I could kind of plug Final Crisis in to that event. So I guess that's why I'm saying right now I don't have a lot of motivation to do that because it doesn't really matter to Final Crisis for me to know where JSA takes place as far as the GOG thing. There's not a motivation for me to really care about that. And that's just a personal thing. This isn't in any way disputing you.
Yeah, I know. And to be honest, the only reason why I'm curious about that is Hawkman. I get the definitive answer: is Hawkman dead or alive?
Well, I think we're going to get that answer in DC 0, and I'm wondering if, from everything I'm hearing, it looks like we may see that Kyle Baker stuff might be from the next weekly book that stuff that was leaked about Kyle Baker's art for Hawkman that he was doing looks like it might be the next weekly book. I'm wondering if that means that Hawkman's solo series won't launch until after the next weekly book.
Well, they did say the weekly isn't going to run 52 weeks.
Right.
It's going to be a shorter period, which, okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't care. To me, that should be story-driven anyway.
Yeah.
So I like having a weekly book, and I like having a weekly book that has a good storyline. Trinity had a great storyline, so I hope they follow it up with another great storyline. I don't care how long it is. That, to me, if you're going to get excited for reading a book every week, it's got to be good.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they're going to have a lot of top talent on it, so I'm just like, okay, sign me up. But I'm interested, and you're right, for Hawkman I would want to know as well, but I think we're going to know where Hawkman takes place with regards to DC Zero. So I don't know. I'm wondering if Carter, maybe he's I think he's dead, right? He died in Final Cry. Are we right?
That's how I took it, that he and Kendra both died.
Right.
But I don't know. That's the only thing I'm like, I don't know what's going on with that.
Right.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to find out the clarification on that. I think DC Zero is where we're supposed to find out some. I don't know. That's it. You've got me curious about that now too. But the Mary Marvel stuff is really where I want to see some resolution to her.
And I think we're going to.
Yeah.
We're going to see some final resolution. And it's funny because...
Well, they got to get her with... The pink hair's got to go.
Yeah.
She's got to go back to being Mary Marvel, right?
Yeah. I think we're going to see her go back to being Mary.
Not Black Mary.
Not Black Mary. And this coming from the guy who likes Black Mary and wanted to see Black Mary, I don't think we're going to see it. And my gut is telling me the reason it's all going to fall down is because Black Adam is going to do it. Black Adam's starting to recognize, there's problems with ISIS. Yeah. You can see it. You can kind of see it in his eyes when he's like, okay, let's just, you're back. Let's just go off. We'll be ourselves. We'll leave all these people alone and we'll live happily ever after. And she's like, no, the world has to pay. And you can kind of see it in his eyes going, this isn't the love that made my love who made me give up my anger and find the better path in life. So I think Black Adam is going to stop ISIS, and then Black Adam's going to stop Black Mary. And
it's interesting though that he's going to have to take a good long look at who he is and what his role is. He's an interesting character. He's an interesting conundrum for himself because ISIS is doing what he was doing in World War III.
And so it's. Yeah, I'm really I gotta know what's gonna go on with my guy because I like Black Adam. That's my boy. So
I like Atom Smasher being back, and
yes.
I like it being addressed that
they don't trust
Wildcat
him.
doesn't trust him and stuff like that. It's again, Atom Smasher was a character in the original Justice Society series that I really enjoyed, and to see him back handled by Johns again, because Johns handled that great story arc. Have you read any of that? What happened with Atom Smasher originally?
No. Okay. I've started picking up some of the John's the previous JSA stuff, but it's like anything else, I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
When you eventually get to the parts with Black Adam and how the whole Kahndaq thing came into, you'll actually see what happened. There's a direct tie and a direct relationship to what happened with him that made him a traitor to Black Adam. So this is an interesting change of direction for him to be there at this point after what he's gone through, and I really like seeing this kind of bookended for him at this point. I'm excited for JSA. The Origin and Omens in the back of that issue was one that I'm like, oh, it's going to be so hard because it looks like we're going to be losing characters on the team, and the ones that were silhouetted as possibly Liberty Bell and Our Man, for example. And then Mr. Terrific looks like he's going to be in some dire straits at some point. So I don't know. What do you think of these Origin and Omens backup in general? Are you enjoying them?
Oh, yeah. I got to give kudos. DC is releasing these things online.
Yeah. I really respect that.
So if you're not buying, you don't have to buy a comic just for the couple pages of the Origins.
Yeah.
You can just read it online. I like that. That is definitely a nice little.
Well, I like that you can read all of them because they're kind of laying out for each of these characters a little background, but they're also giving hints, like what Johns has done in his own book. I like that each writer that's involved is leaving little tidbits of what's going on.
What may happen, what's going to happen, the possible futures to come down the line. Yeah.
The Wonder Woman one's a favorite of mine as well. I like that last page of that one. I don't want to spoil it right now because we'll talk more about Wonder Woman, and I didn't do a spoiler for that. But I liked how that page laid out some potential future for her. It was almost like you got to see that Diana's complexities, the complex nature of her. I'm going to stop right here.
Stop.
Stop. But that's what that's what is driving a lot of these things are going to happen. So I'll stop right there because I'm going to start gushing about Wonder Woman, and I'm going to do that, but it won't be this week. It's hard not to do it though. It's like so. Anyway, I love these cons. I'm jealous for the people that got to go to either WonderCon or MegaCon because a lot of these events, it's always fun to be there at these DC panels. And I encourage you, if you've got a con that's coming somewhere near you, and they're going to be doing the big DC Nation, DC Universe panels, to go and hit those panels and experience that for yourself because they were something I went online to see the news, but there's something about being there, being able to ask questions, being able to be a part of those panels that is exciting. And I just thought this news was worthy of getting on this week to just kind of chat about it. And Newsarama.com is the site that I went to and you went to get this information. So if you want to see the full details of the panel scripted from them, you can go ahead and take a look at it there. But I always find that interesting. So, good stuff.
You filthy criminals.
Well, I was just going to say, just let you know that one of my favorite Green Arrow Black Canary scenes was one you worked on. And it was issue 15.
Okay.
Where it was during that flashback sequence when we're seeing what happened to Mia and all that, and she's sitting there talking, and Canary's talking about, well, make sure you bring protection. And she's like, oh, yeah, I'm all about the continuity. And just the look on everybody's face when she goes, oh, you meant arrows, didn't you? I still laugh when I see that sequence, and it just, especially because you think about previously in that issue, there was like really darker scenes when they're fighting in the alleyway, and it goes back to that flashback, that lighter, just that shifting in the colors, and even when they're doing the flashback when he's on that island, that is just like, color-wise for me, was just just like, wow, this is a really cool issue.
Very true. When I read that in the script, and I like Green Arrow Black Canary is a rarity where I usually not only get to read the script, but I read the letters, where I have almost all 22 pages in before I get to even start the project. I'm glad you brought up that moment because, again, I'm a comic snob, but when I read that moment, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Just because again, it's a father-daughter, it's a mother-daughter type of thing environment. I mean, Green Arrow Black Canary, I always think of more as the Arrow Bunch. It's a family type of thing with Connor and, all these, different things, how he is protecting his family. Green Arrow is all about the people that he loves and past, future, and present. And when they're talking about bringing protection, it's their well-being. It's not, they're not overbearing. It's just really comical and at the same time, a relatively realistic portrayal of how kids might think today compared to an old, aged superhero. Yeah, I like that scene a lot too. So
it had me laughing, and especially with the change in the writer in the series and all that, because I am a writer focused. I'm the story and the script and all that kind of heavy focus, just because I have no artistic abilities. So I appreciate the artwork, but I am drawn into story. So seeing that the new writer had that same style to it, then I see the same great art. I'm like, yeah, this is my Green Arrow Black Canary that I've been loving since I started reading this. So it was really just a great feeling for me just to see that story as well as visual and written word. So thank you very much for that, by the way.
Yeah, the thanks is not needed. I think all of us on the whole team of the book, thank you, for reading and enjoying what we're throwing down. Because, like I said, in many ways, if someone doesn't think about what we're doing, if you just go through the book reading, then Andrew's words aren't getting really through to you. You kind of have to read and then reread between the lines. Read once to kind of understand, but read again to feel the emotion that's being said. And I think many people, especially the younger ones, read too fast and are too critical to understand what's really going down. And I think that's why, people are surprised that there are a lot of older people that enjoy comics. And I think they enjoy comics for the fact that they can understand the complexity of the character, complexity of the dialogue, whether it's political satire, whether it's a reference to someone that we all loved in the past, and the capacity to memorize a storyline from 2 years ago and still use as reference, again, for the whole complexity of the story. And again, the issue, I mean, it's a good example of how a issue goes. 14 to 15, it was a conscious effort to change the look. Okay, so people are wondering, like, what happened between issue 14 and 15 to change it, because the penciler is still Mike Norton. The inker is different, but why is it different, and what does it add? And then the colors, again, I told you that 14 was the issue that I really felt like this was my book. And from 14 to 15, I changed a little bit, but at the same time, it really still keeps the mood. The colors, again, I'll repeat that the colors in Vigilante are not the colors in Green Arrow, Black Canary. And I think, again, the way people read the book is important. Now, if you go with a too critical of an eye or a too much of a skim over, you're really going to miss so much that books offer. And I think it's great, all the books that people can read, that they read them all. I think that's amazing, and they can enjoy them all, for what they are. But, someone like myself, if I read too many, I kind of get lost, and then I feel like I'm starting to compare. So I try to stick to, some books I just like. And again, though, that's also with a little asterisk by it, because I have to read every book I work on. And not only do I read the book itself, I have to read the full script and, all the notes. And that does take a while. I think it was Warren Ellis who said, and I don't want to quote him wrong, so let's just say it's not him who said this. A writer of comics has said, I don't read comics because I spend all my day writing them. And in some ways that can be true. And I think that's, again, that separates the fan creator being friends sometimes. I think that's where some of the hostility that creators have towards fans that are critical of their work is because they don't compare their work to other writers or colorists or inkers or pencilers. They compare themselves to their last issue. So for me, I'm comparing Green Arrow Black Canary 14 to 15. I'm not comparing title to title, and I think sometimes fans will compare that, and I just think it's an interesting fact of the thinking of the reader, and I just think it adds or takes away from the enjoyment of the book also.
I got to compliment this book. I read Judd's entire run previous to Green Arrow Black Canary, and I really thought that when Green Arrow Black Canary hit, there was like a reinvigoration of the characters, there was an energy about the book, there was an excitement about this book that was just really apparent, and I really enjoyed that. I was really worried when I heard a new writer was coming on. I was thrilled to hear that we were going to have the same, basically the same art team with some changes. It was like, wow, what is this going to do to the book? And what was really great, I really liked the subtle changes to the art and the colors, where it feels like this, very much like the same book, but it's almost like the book in some ways has matured in a way that I love what the writer is doing with this book and how it's matured. It feels like everything that came before led to the events we're seeing in the current 2 issues that have been out so far, and that these characters went through all these things, and that to me it's again something that I was so worried about became such a huge strength, because I'm like, wow, I am so totally into this right now.
We need to think about the team, and if we're thinking about the team, we have the writer, the pencils, the inks, the colors, the letters, the cover artist, but what's the last person that we're leaving out? The editor. And I think Mike Carlin gets the credit for what you just appreciated. I think this is, sometimes editors get credit for these absurd things, like the Eisners, when the title wins Best Book of the Year, a lot of times the editor gets the award. And I'm thinking to myself sometimes, well, I know that editor, and that editor was great, but really he let the writer and artist do whatever they want. And in a way, you should get an award for that, because how hard is it to be in charge of a project and not do anything, when you're used to doing stuff? And that's hard. So in a way, you can appreciate that. But in the other way, why is he getting the award and, they're not? You see kind of what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so sometimes editors and colorists and pencilers, they get credit for something that they never really were a part of, and except for just being there. And that happens all the time, and you can't think ill towards it. But then other times, like Mike Carlin, doesn't get credit for editing this book to keep the title strong during a writer change, during a style change, during, a colorist change. Because again, so far there's been 2 colorists on this book, there's been 2 writers on this book, there's been 2 inkers on this book, and the book is still strong. And so right now, I guess I am putting in my vote for Mike Carlin as editor of the year for the Eisners for Green Arrow, Black Canary, for exactly what you said, not even what I said, but for what you said of how the book has matured in a way. And correct me if you think I'm wrong, but don't you guys think that that's the editor's job, and that's how we should award editors for people who, even through change, keep a book strong?
I'm glad to hear you say that as a creator, to talk about what an editor does for a book and does for you. Because that's something I think as fans, we don't always totally see what the role of an editor is and how that all comes together. And just for you to give credit to that and how nice that transition was and say, no, that's the editor. That's the part where, look at that, how well that all meshed together and all that. As a fan, for me, that was something that was very educational for me, just to hear you say that, because you're on that end of it. You see that end of it. We don't. Yeah, I'm totally agreeing with you. I just feel like wow, I just learned something.
Yeah, we learned something.
I learned something very new there that I just totally enjoyed every bit of that rant you went on right there, because I'm like, wow, this is totally an educational experience for me.
That's why I told Sean, I said, look, you guys ever want to do a real interview, 100%, we go sit in a pub, during one of the conventions all day long, and you'll be surprised how many people walk through a certain pub that I'm not going to name, just to kind of keep it a little bit private, but and the location, but of what con I'm talking about. But if we go to that convention, and we go to this pub, you'll be surprised how many top level writers and artists go to this place to talk about comics. And we're not talking about to talk about Superman's blues or his reds, or his anger or excitement, even though that does happen. We're talking about to talk about which person is holding their weight, which person is dropping the ball, which person needs to be recognized on a level. And I think a lot of creators can recognize new talent 5 years before the fan does. And the sad part is, because money speaks louder, if the fan doesn't recognize the talent early enough, that artist goes to video games. That artist goes to movies. So if we really want to keep top-notch artists, it's hard, because if we don't get fan support, we might fail. And again, the way I lucked out, if it wasn't for the buzz around some of my planetary and some of my authority and just some of my other work from editors and from, some fans that, the book, because the book sold well, and it had nothing to do with them liking me. It has everything to do with the book selling well. It had everything to do with Warren Ellis. It had everything to do with John Cassaday. It had everything to do with Frank Quitely, and Mark Miller. If they didn't sell well, then David Barron might never exist. I might be still working, somewhere else under someone else's name, because they're the ones that are helping me put food on my table. They're the ones that are helping me, keep getting comic book work. Or who knows what would happen. Or maybe I'd be in video games right now and we wouldn't be even having this conversation about the way comics work or the way coloring works, or, just chatting about how much we like a certain character. It's just, I think that people forget that it is a business of money, and to keep people that are good, you have to say stuff to the company. I mean, how long has it been since we really had in the back pages of comics letters from fans? When I was a kid, in again my short collecting stint before I became a professional, but for those 3 years, I read every back letter in the X-Men and X-Force and all the other Marvel issues that fans wrote. Oh, I like this, or what's this question? Oh, you'll have to see in issue 13 or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, where did that go? Where did that excitement from fans to not worry about the value of the comic and not worry about the value of the sketch, but what happened to the love of the sketch, the love of the character and the comic, the appreciation of where the comic's going. I just think that's being lost. And I think, and I'm hoping that podcasts like this program and others, maybe add some more of that. But, we can't just talk to each other as fans. We have to talk to the company sometimes, because otherwise we're going to lose some top talent.
This is why I do this. When Jim and I got started with this, it's one of the reasons why we continue to do this, is just as fans, my irritation a lot of times, and you don't even need to respond to this, unless you, certainly if you want to. But one of the things as a fan that I get irritated with and I miss about the letter columns is you didn't get this with the letter columns. On the internet nowadays, it's become very popular for people to pick out one or two panels and totally trash a book. And when I say people, I'm talking about people who are supposedly quote-unquote fans. And they forget to talk about the rest of the pages in the book and what was so great about those and what was so great about the development of the book and things like that, and add something for people who maybe don't read comics or who, are looking for a jump-on point as that thing to kind of lynch onto and say, okay, this is the book that I want to try. They never get to that point in their discussion where I feel like, why would I even bother trying to pick that up? Because they've told me nothing. They've given me nothing constructive or productive for me to work with as a fan. And there is that fan element where that's what I look for in commentary. A letter column does that. So often, you could pick up a book with the old letter columns and you could literally read the letter column and decide whether or not you want to even pick up that book.
Right. I agree fully, and I would like to say something, on that, because it goes even on a bigger scale, okay? And I'm going to leave some of my thought because it's such a big scale. One, people, there's two parts to that. I believe that people want to be famous, and so if they can trash a book and people will read it, they'll just keep trashing. If they trash a book and they get 15 hate mails back, like, oh, that book was awesome, you got to be kidding me. But if they praise a book, and no one says, oh, like maybe they have 3 and they say, oh, I like the book. What are they going to write? Are they going to write hate mail, or are they going to write, or hate blogs, or whatever we want to call them, reviews, or nice reviews? It's like the whole Howard Stern. Now I'm not ragging on Howard Stern. I think Howard Stern's funny, and I like him on a lot of levels and dislike him on some levels, but that's what's great about him, that you like him and hate him at the same time. Reviews that they go by what the fan responds to. So again, I cry out to the fans, stop responding to negative things about comics. If you love comics, please write my editor. If you like me as a colorist, go out there and find the DC address, in the back of the book, which I pray is still there. I'm pretty sure it is. Right there. Let's see, where is it? It's 1700 Broadway, New York, 10019. Attention to DC Comics, Mike Carlin. I loved Mike Norton's transition from issue 14 to 15. I loved this. One thing I maybe was a little weirded out by was this. Like you can be negative in a or in a way that just kind of wants you to say what you liked. In the past, like, why did we do that? But the fact is that we're questioning why did we do that. But still, loyal fan, Sally Jones. It's like, where is that? And I think partly is because people think responding on a website is them telling the readers. I got sad to say, editors can't read all the reviews online. It's too many. Even though comics that's their job, is too time consuming to do all the books they do, to read these things, so they don't know what you're saying unless you write them. And I really wish, and I think we should get rid of the DC news page, and no offense to anyone who writes a DC news page whenever they write it, but I believe that should be one more page for emails being sent in, fan letters being sent in. When's the last time we've seen fan art published in a book? So I think one is everybody wants to be a celebrity, but 2 is the fact that they don't understand that responding to a review on a website, such as like Newsarama, and I'm a fan of Newsarama, but responding to that is not the same thing as speaking to the editor, in an impactful way. So instead of ditching the book, because we lost that intimacy with the reader. You know, I mean, we really have. And I'm not talking about the title lost to intimacy. I'm talking about the company lost to intimacy. We can put all the money we want in conventions and free stuff, but how many people have seen the parents of the small child grab more buttons than the actual fan? So all that pirate loot is really wasted on the wrong people. The free stuff is great, and I'm not saying don't give out the free stuff, DC Comics, because I keep it coming because I think people like it. But at the same time, that doesn't build relationships with the reader. What builds relationships with the reader is communication and actually understanding that this communication will be heard, and here's the letters, here's the proof. You know, the sad part is I know that Wildstorm, we used to have to write some fake letters because people stopped writing them. And we had letter columns because the letters were real. And 100% the letters are real in comics. But the very tail end of them, when we got rid of them, is because we stopped getting letters. And what do you do when you stop getting letters? But again, where did all the letters go? Online. And we can't publish those. They're not ours. They're not ours to publish, so we can't put them in there. We can't take Newsarama quotes of Spawn 476 that said they loved Divine Right number 8. We can't use that because it's not ours. So if you want to be heard, again, readers, to the editor, you have to write the editor. You can't write. And the truth is, you want to write me, David Barron, the colorist, about why did you do this? Write the editor. And put in there, dear Mr. Carlin, I'm writing you because I have a question for David Barron. You know, he will get it to me. He'll be like, whoa, why, you know, the relationship can still exist if the reader wants it to. And so I'm just letting you know that if you have a fan mail for Jim Lee, send it to Jim Lee. You send it to the company he's working for. Currently right now is mainly DC Comics and things like that. Send it to DC, you know, attention to the project that you have a question about, and in the letter to the editor, you know, say this question is for Jim. He will ask Jim because they will be impressed by the time that it took to actually write a letter. Forget the emails. Forget the websites. Now, I'm not saying forget them in terms of enjoying them. I'm saying that if you're trying to contact us about the book, that's the only way really to do it.
I like that, though, that there's a respect for the fact that, hey, as a fan, if you took the time to send this, it is going to get to the creator in question. It's going to get to the person in question, and that's the way to do it, because you're showing that it really was important enough to you that it wasn't hit-and-run commentary. It was something where you took the time to sit down and really put some thought into it, and really you were passionate about whether it was something critical, like you're saying, or it was something that was positive that you're saying, that you really took some time to do a well-thought-out thing, versus I think there's just a ton of hit-and-run commentary now, in my eyes, that I feel that people aren't really passionate about. They're very impulsive, and it's a spur of the moment kind of thing, and if you were to talk to them about it 2 weeks later, they would forget that they even said it. And
right. Cyberbullying is a real thing, and without people even realizing that they're being jerks on the internet, they're destroying things that they possibly might like. You know, people go, what happened to that miniseries? Like, that was a good one. What happened? Why did it stop? Well, your negative feedback killed sales to people that might have picked it up, which killed the book. You know, I mean, again, it's about money. So if you like something, yes, buy it. And I'm not saying buy everything that you have, because I know in today, especially this day and age, money's tight. I'm a homeowner, and this isn't for sympathy or anything like that. It's just a fact of life. My house has dropped in California from what it was worth, not in half, but almost. Everybody's dollar is tight, and I fully understand that. But at the same time, that doesn't mean, go to the internet to download books online. That doesn't mean to bash things that you just kind of, looked at, or bash someone's work because you read something that they did 10 years ago or 4 years ago or even, 6 months ago. And I didn't like that, so I'm not going to like this, and that guy's a jerk, or something like that. Like, you have to have some responsibility for what you love. And if you love comics, I know this sounds weird, but what's with all the hate? What's with all these people bashing it for no real reason? And I know I cut you off. Hopefully you still have, the thought that you were, going with, but I just had to jump in because it's like, what is with all the hate?
You actually made the point that that's exactly what I was going for. I'm sorry, Jim.
I was just going to say, right now, oh, my brother, testify, man.
It's true. And that's why I was laughing a little bit when I was saying it. And, I'm a coach. For the fans that out there, I coach high school sports. Right now I'm coaching varsity soccer, and we're in mid-season right now, and that's what I kind of do with my free time, and so you kind of have a little of the speech in you because of the coaching, but at the same time, the one thing I found out about speeches is you don't give a speech that you don't believe. You really don't. You don't say it because even if you may not fully trust it, you still kind of believe it because there's always truth in everything you say. It's kind of like if you make fun of someone, you go, oh, I didn't really mean that. That was just a joke. Well, it might be a little truth in that little joke, that little thing. So it's like, I understand that if you're saying that you hate this book, I understand that there might be a little truth in there that, it's not up to par, it's not what you're looking for. But understand you saying that you hate this book, that it sucked, that art, I don't know why that artist is working, you might have just made that guy lose his job. You might have just killed that title that you kind of liked or that a bunch of other people kind of liked, but then you're swaying their thoughts a little bit. And it's kind of like why movie stars should not be in politics. Because sometimes you'll like the movie star for their work, and you'll agree with them in politics because of it. Now, I'm a huge fan of The Daily Show, and actually my wife's watching it right now as I speak, and so I see Jon Stewart right there. And whatever that man says, I do lean towards because I appreciate his opinion, but I kind of developed that through the years of watching him. It wasn't like he showed up on TV, he's a celebrity type of thing. So at the same time, to the readers, just because someone, says it online, think about it, that the average news place on Newsarama, I think is like maybe 50 comments, 15 comments. And sure, there might be, 3 pages on some really hot topic, something like that, but we're talking about the average. That's 15 people in the world that are responding to that review or responding. Are we really going to believe 15 people over your own opinion? And that, I guess, again, that's all I'm saying. It's like, first, if your opinions hate, why spread it? And if you're going to read a message of hate of a project or even a message of praise, don't believe it until you see it, until you go and make your own opinion. Because as you just said, Jim, Sean, and myself go to a museum. We're not going to be all staring and Googling over the same piece of artwork. We're going to all appreciate something else on different levels. And I think the fan is really confusing. Again, everyone knows in comics, you're not clutching comics to be a millionaire 20 years from now. We already left that dream of, yes, there's a collectability factor, but at the same time, we're not going to be millionaires if we polybag every book we all did in the early 90s.
David,
yeah.
I can't let my wife listen to this now because I keep telling her that.
We are, we're in the process of kind of cleaning because I'm going to have a baby soon, and so we're trying to spring clean stuff. And as you guys know, what's the first to go when your wife needs to clean something? Your comics. My wife's very supportive, obviously, knowing that's my work and stuff. But I know that it's between some bases or my comics. I have to pick carefully, right?
Right.
So in some ways it could be good. Yes, I'm sorry that I let the cat out of the bag. That all the X-Men covers that I bought when I first started collecting are not as rare as I thought they once were.
But honey, just so you know, that's David's collection. My collection still has all of its value.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say, but that's my collection. I picked the wrong one. I fell for the coupon tricks and the gold foils and things like that. I want to go on a little story because I know there's other fans that have done this also. Okay, I joined again. I was a huge Rob Liefeld fan, and there's Hank. Hank won't be listening to this because again, he's a big also executive. That doesn't, honestly, not because they hate, it's because they just don't have time to listen to everything. So I can tell the story. But Hank wrote Youngblood. Okay, he was a part of the Youngblood thing. Youngblood was one of my favorite books, right? But obviously we all kind of know, if you're a historian of comics, you kind of know how people look back on Youngblood, the early series. You kind of look back on that. We were in Chicago, and I was, with a group of people. I won't name everybody. I don't want to be a name dropper, but Hank was there, and I did not know that Hank wrote the book. Again, this is when I was young. I was 14 when Youngblood came out. how am I supposed to know, to remember every little name? I was more of a fan, again, of the book, of the characters. And here I am across from the writer of the thing. And I'm saying, man, I love Youngblood. I don't know why that gets such a bad rap. I was excited about it. I thought it was cool. It was like a superhero, like team of James Bonds and, CIA secrets. It's really cool. And now they're celebrities and all this stuff. And Hank is on the other side of me. And he is just like steaming from the ears. And I look at him, I go, what, you didn't like the book? Like, why didn't you like it? And he thought I was messing with him. He thought, because we were just getting to know each other also, so he doesn't know me. So he's thinking, here I am, because he knows me for my work more than I knew him for his work. I just knew he was high up at Wildstorm, a new one, and we're just getting to know each other. And he is steaming through the years. So you have to imagine, as if you created a baby and no one liked your baby, or you thought that no one liked your baby, and then there's this one fan. I mean, how many years ago is that now? Like 15, right? Right. 15 plus years ago later, saying how much he loves this book, you're gonna take it the wrong way. You're gonna think this person is just lying because you haven't heard that in 20 years. And I actually checked my Youngblood, and I have his signature on my book. And I just think that's the funniest thing ever, that I have the signature. I mean, because he did not believe me. I still haven't shown him that Youngblood yet because, I don't go to the Wildstorm studio very often to show him, but and when I run into him next at convention, I hope to show him. But, that look, here's my signed copy, but it's just kind of funny. And so that's my little tangent on my, story of Youngblood. But you never know what's going to happen and what's going to be worth anything. But anyways, I was part of the Youngblood fan club. Okay, going back to the whole thing of why my collection is not worth anything, but your wife can be okay knowing that your collection is again, I fell for the fan club.
Kidding.
Again,
I'm totally kidding too.
Yeah, no, of course. But we don't have to tell her that. But join the fan club, and you know what Rob Liefeld sent me personally? Again, saying that very sarcastically, was a gold foil Youngblood #1. And I was like, oh man, I saw this in the comic book store for $120. I asked my best friend, I said, Nick, my childhood best friend definitely, I was like, Nick, what should I do with it? And he's like, man, that book right there is worth so much money because, again, at 13, 14, that's a lot of money, $120. He's like, that could buy you so many comic books if you sold it. I'm like, really? What should I do? Should I keep this one prize, this one gold foil comic book, or should I sell it for, a bunch of Amazing Spider-Man by McFarlane, because I could trade. Because obviously every collector knows that if you trade a book to the store, you get more value. If you sell it, you get almost half or less than half the value. So I traded it in. I got all that stuff. Now here's the, here I am, Donald Trump right now. That book 2 weeks later dropped from $120 to $10.
Wow, nice.
Because they found out, as everyone did, Rob Liefeld for the fan club sent everybody a gold foil, Youngblood book. Or some of them even got like the platinum foil. So the ones that they sent the shippers to kind of like say, here you go, or the stores to say, here you go, like a little bonus, one each, turned out, 5 months later to be to everybody who joined the fan club. So it's like, so that was my only time I think I ever profited on comics. And because the amount of comics I bought for the Image coupon, because as you knew, you needed to buy 4 of each copy, 2 to save for the coupon and 2 to rip out of the coupon, to get Image #0. And like I said, comics were doing well right when I entered, professionally. So, but yeah, that's how much our comics are worth. So again, it goes back to don't hate. love what you read because you're spending your money on it. And again, if you're not going to spend your money on it because it's not for you, hate messages can really affect something that someone else really might like. And comics don't have to be for everybody. But at the same time, spending more time praising people on things that you do like is definitely going to better serve you in the long run than it is ripping on people that you're not even interested in. So
well, I'm a big proponent of the fact with the amount of product on the shelves right now, if you're finding something that you dislike that much, why are you still reading it? Find something else. There's so much more to choose from, and let the people that are enjoying that continue enjoying that book. And I love the big important message that came out of this at the end of the book. That address is like gold. If you have a book, whether you're reading 50 books or 3 books, those 3 books that you're reading, if they're that important to you that you're reading them and loving them every month, take a time to write letters to the editor to let them know that, hey, I have in my budget, I can pick up 1 book. I can pick up 1 book. This is my 1 book I'm picking up. Here's why. And please let the creative team know why and all that. That taking that time to do that, to pick your favorite book out and do that, is something of value. I'll be honest with you, I don't do that enough. And there's a lot of books that I'm thoroughly enjoying that I would love to just take the time and do that. It's amazing. And you're right, it makes more sense. Taking the time to write a letter and send it in is something that's much more of value nowadays because it's so easy to do everything else.
How we met, okay? And I'll share the little story. There was some Alan Paslakwa, ding, 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 give him the 10 cents for his name. And I think we're up to like $6 right now we owe him for using his name. But given the conversation that you guys had with him, there was something said, and we were asked, not to talk about that like 2 days after he said it. And you guys took it out, and I said, thank you. That's a big favor to me. And, you guys call and things like that. Like, we appreciate fans. And I think some people think that we don't appreciate fans. But the truth is, as cocky or as arrogant as every artist is, if you don't buy our book, we don't get paid. And especially for the artist writers, royalties are a part of the deal. For colorists, they're not. Hopefully one day, again, if people write in and say, hey, I appreciate this colorist, maybe we'll actually get a little bit more, earnings too coming our way, which is always nice, again, especially in, times of everyone struggling. But at the same time, again, it's a favor. It's like we're building that relationship. Me talking to you right now isn't necessarily for me personally to build a relationship, even though that's definitely developing. But at the same time, it's to have the fans a little bit closer to the creative staff. I mean, when every DVD movie fan out there, I used to buy every single banded edition with all the bonus commentaries and all the behind the scenes and all the extra footage. I quit doing that a little bit just for movies that, I only buy those now, the movies I really, really, like and want to know how it was made. That's a relationship being built. Kevin Smith was great at this, about talking about his movies, and he developed such a fan base because he would build a relationship. He would let people say his movies are awful, and at the same time, he would take it and make, a very, intimate response to it, and that would win over that fan that did not like his movie. And then all of a sudden, that is now he's a number one supporter. And so it's kind of like, and for the record, I'm a fan of Kevin Smith, if you're wondering. And, so I use him in a positive way, again, because while I talk about people you don't really like, talk about people you do like. Right. And I don't think there's enough of that. We need a relationship starting to build up. And creators go to the cons. Why do you think creators go to the con? Sure, some of them are trying to shill, some pages and sell them and make more money. But most of them are giving you a chance to say something back to us. But not everybody goes to conventions. I lose money every time I go to San Diego Comic-Con. If I went to New York, which is coming up this weekend, correct?
Yes.
Right? New York Comic-Con this
February
weekend?
6th
Yeah.
to the 8th, yes.
Yeah, if I went to New York Comic Con, I would lose money. It's not like, these artists are paid to appear. Now, the people that are on the main ticket, a lot of times they'll get a room paid for and maybe a flight paid for to show up at the convention. But that's it. It's not like they get tons and tons of food. A lot of times there'll be a green room and things like that where they'll, give a little sandwiches. But it's not like the dinner is going to be paid for, the breakfast is going to be paid for, or something else while you go. It's so. I hope fans appreciate when they actually do get to see a creator there, and especially the independent people, the ones that are struggling to sell their book. You know, I'm tired of people going up to them and making fun of their artwork because it's not mainstream, or because, I mean, these people are putting their money into something that they love. And if fans, how you said, are going to buy just one book, shouldn't they love that book?
Right.
So I agree with you in what you say, and I think a relationship that was destroyed by variant covers, by gold foils, by coupons, by saying it's a 25-page book, you know, but really it's an 18-page book because 3 pages have a tree on them and that's it, you know. You know, I mean, we all know what I'm talking about, right? Absolutely. You know, so absolutely. I think that's what killed the relationship. And I think, yes, it's on the creators to win it back over, but I think we've been trying for the last, 5+ years, and I don't think that, I think the fan is still bitter and still hurt that their collection is not worth millions, but that wasn't necessarily our fault either. You know, it's a give and take. If we made it and you guys bought it, which I'm a part of that basis that got burnt. And I think that comics, to survive and get better and not lose the talent that we have, need to build another relationship back with the fan, and that will keep success strong. Because I go to San Diego Comic-Con again. I try to go to lots of them, but the San Diego Comic-Con, and I believe the New York Comic-Con will be much like this, is not so much a comic convention, but an entertainment convention, and comics are really the underbelly of what's going on. You know, like, yes, you have DC and Marvel and all these things, and IDW, which, has been producing some great stuff, but you don't, it's so much video games and TV and just other items that comics isn't even a part of that convention anymore, and it's kind of sad. I mean, where's that relationship? Where's the outcry of the fan to say, no, I don't want video games on this, on the main floor. Video games are great, but I'm here because I'm a comic book fan. Where is this company, and why did you shove them all the way over here? Where it's so hard to get to because you put them. So it's kind of like a responsibility of the fan, I guess, that I'm crying out to say, hey, maybe David Barron made a point on how comics are going, and I would like, to go back to how I remembered them, where I did like them, where I did appreciate the 3 that I read. And this is the book I'm reading, and I'm a fan of that, and I'll do everything, with that and interact with the team. Again, not just the editor, not just the, penciler, but the letter. I mean, learn how to appreciate that. Again, don't be so critical about something that you may not fully understand, but if you are all of a sudden are appreciating it in a different way, those sound effects that he made were awesome. I mean, there are certain letterers that I can tell you do an amazing job, and I'm only going to say one, and I'm going to say one. I've worked with him in the past, and he's multi-award winner, and it's Todd Klein. And I'm only going to say him, not because other people aren't as good as him or do great work or unique work. It's just that he's very well known. So hopefully me saying, his name, Todd Klein, will trigger some people's appreciation of him, which will lead to appreciations of discovering letters that they know, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Like I've been told by many people, especially John Layman, because and again, I named my company after him. I was a best man by default at his wedding. Yeah, he was at my wedding, and he tells me I ramble, and I believe him. But at the same time, he also says a lot of times what I say is brilliant. So I don't worry too much. But yeah, it's just, let's concentrate on making things that we like. Let's concentrate on buying things that we like, and let's concentrate about saying why we like them, not so much why we hate them. And I think comics will be in pretty good shape.
I think, just speaking on what you were talking about creators building a relationship, I want to say from our standpoint, in the podcast community, creators have been very nice to us, very supportive of us, either through sending in an email for saying, hey, Alan is a great example. Alan said, hey, I was talking to David Barron. He said he would, be interested in doing your show. That's the kind of way we've gotten people on our show. But that's, the creator outreach to take time. Like you're taking a lot of your time right now to do something with us just to connect with fans. So You're connecting with a few thousand fans right now doing this. And, you know, it's a small community of people that you're taking time out of your schedule to connect with. And that, to me, is... It's a testament, I think, to creators. Because Sean McKeever asked us this at the Wizard World Chicago. What is your... there was a panel there for podcasters and a whole bunch of podcasters. He said, what have creators been like to you? How have they treated you as fans? And I do think you're right. I think there is a trend now where we're seeing a lot of creators who are reaching out to fans and trying to make small connections and do stuff and intimate things and trying to get the word out that, hey, you know, we care about you guys and we do care about the relationships. So, I mean, that I do think is getting out there. And I think that there is that shift there where I think fans are becoming fans of creators again, if that makes sense, where there's not that I know what you're talking about. There was almost like an adversarial relationship there for a while.
Well, I mean, even Kevin Smith, going back to, you know, Chasing Amy, even kind of touched on that, where that fan just said, "Oh, Inker, you're a tracer. You know, like, you suck at what you do. You go around and I mean, what the worst part is, and Alex Garner, you know, probably got hit the hardest by that because everybody went up to him, you know, and if you guys don't know Alex Garner, you know, a great inker on Gen 13 and in Danger Girl and so much others and such accomplished artist in his own right, that the fact that people thought it was funny to you know, say a movie line over and over to belittle his work of saying you're just tracing is ridiculous. And every inker, I think, was a little upset with, you know, Kevin Smith just for pointing that out. But really, I think Kevin was kind of ahead of the curve, pointing out how fans started treating creators. That no longer are you my hero, you're my enemy, make something better. You just doodle for a living. I mean, so many people, like when I tell them what I do, literally, you know, will say, so do you use like markers or is the computer do all the work, or, you know, like, and then like the next joke is, do you stay in the lines? It's just like there's a respect factor where we're pouring in the time and the creative effort, and there's no one more sensitive than an artist. And I'm not saying artist in terms of a pencil. I'm saying artist is of someone who wants to create something for someone. You know, there's nothing more sensitive, you know, than that person, because they're pouring out they're taking away their security blanket. They're vulnerable. They're saying, this is my work. Do you like it? And if you say no and then go on to belittle them, you know, in a little bit ways, of course they're going to be mad. So I think again, from Chasing Amy, and then of course we're not blaming Kevin Smith by any means, because that he's again pointing out facts, but right before then, you know, a couple years, you know, late 90s, all of a sudden the fans started thinking that it was okay to just rip someone with no, you know, with no actual formulated, educated opinion of what went down. If you talk to a fan that hates something, and then you ask them, well, what do you hate about it? And then this is a fan talking to a non-fan, they won't know the characters' names. They won't know the plot line. They won't know, you know, so why are we even taking their opinion? If you find that someone's, you know, hating on a book and you like it, why don't you just, you know, don't get in an argument with the guy or anything like that. But at the same time, you might want to ask them a question in the plot line. Like, and my favorite one, when people come up to, I mean, and people do come up to you and say bad things, you know, to your face. And my favorite thing is to ask them a question that doesn't exist, like in JLA. So when they say, oh, JLA, it's kind of going okay, I just don't understand it. You know, I read every issue, but, you know, I think it's kind of lame. I go, well, what did you think of the crossover with Wolverine in there? Did you like that? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, that was kind of cool, but it was okay. You know, there's no crossover with Wolverine in there. And so I just tell them, I go, well, maybe you'll like it next time, you know, it's good to hear. And then I know just to throw away his opinion. And it's funny because as clever as the 16-year-old across from me, you know, thinks he is, and again, this goes back to the very beginning of our, you know, talking together, was as mature as you guys may have thought, you know, I was trying to describe myself, really, I was awestruck, because as we all know, a 16-year-old male is not as mature as that 16-year-old thinks he is. Right. So, you know, asking these little questions is just hilarious, you know, to see some of the responses.
One quick point I want to make about the Kevin Smith movie too. The sad part about me and that whole thing was the people who would go up to an inker and use those lines are proving every time that they did that that they don't understand satire.
Right.
And the fact that Kevin Smith was making a satire on the very fans that would do something so stupid.
Right. It's true. And the funny part is I know artists that, there are artists that are angry. And they're angry because they are artists. That's part of their thing. Just like how, a lot of musicians are drug users. Now, I'm not saying comic book artists are drug users, and I don't know if, anyone that are. I do know that some of them are angry. They throw a lot of emotion into their scripts, and it's a portrayal of their life. It's a different way of telling their life story. And a lot of good books have came from that way. I've actually, I've written many books, and none of them are published, and because none of them are finished. And I will another story about finishing comics also that I believe in that I have no control of yet. But I've wrote stories of hardships and turned them into superhero stories. It happens. What is Superman? For the younger readers that may not understand, Superman was a hero for a people of pain, a people of that felt thrown away, and they needed a hero. And that's how Superman's idea started. So again, these people that are throwing their story, you might think that they're writing a Green Arrow comic. You might think they're writing a Superman comic, but you never know when this storyline spoke to them because they, or not necessarily spoke to them, but they put a piece of them into the book. Why did so-and-so die? Or why did, well, maybe that was a way of him coping with someone who died in his life. So if you telling him like, oh, that was lame and stupid, stop killing people in your book because that's not going to get more readers, could be a very insensitive thing to say to them face to face, So I think if fans, again, built that intimacy, you might find another appreciation of what's actually going on in the book.
That's awesome.
I know.
I'm literally smiling from ear to ear because this is so totally what I'm about. I just thank you.
Yeah, I know.
It's great to hear it from the creative end and to see that there is that gap that's being bridged. I want to recommend to all of our listeners, please, if you're not checking out David's work, do yourself a favor and do that. Vigilante, Green Arrow, Black Canary, Superman Beyond 3D, if you didn't pick that up with Final Crisis. That's one. If you read Final Crisis, I don't know how you could have missed that, but definitely pick that up because I think it's an essential piece to Final Crisis 7 especially. So if you haven't had a chance, definitely pick that up. And David, thank you so much again for joining us.
Yeah, thanks a
lot.
You
guys are welcome. No problem.
Can Batman escape? One hint, the worst is yet to come.
Jim, as we close out our episode today, we have some New York Comic Con recordings that were outside of the DC Comics line. They're stuff that we had people, whether independent comics, various media companies, things like that came by our table and recorded with us. We recorded a lot of these snippets, and we're going to be airing them over the next few weeks. And on this episode, that's going to be what used to be our blooper reel, and will eventually be our blooper reel again. We'll be devoted to that. So it's extra content for you guys. It'll be in the show notes what it is. I'm putting it at the end because of the fact that it's outside of our normal show topics, but it's also stuff that we had fun recording and chatting about, so we figured it's some nice bonus material for you if you want to listen to it. So it's right there, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. But that was part of the fun for the con for me. I think you and I did like almost nonstop recording at the con every day.
I tell you, that con was just fun, so much fun, and multiple times we keep saying just the energy and excitement in the air, and people, and when I'm at work talking about the con, people would make the mistake of saying, "So, hey, how did that New York thing go?" About 30 minutes later, their eyes would start rolling into the back of their head. You can just see them thinking, "Stop, for the love of God, stop talking now." And so I give them a couple more minutes and then give them off easy. So it was just a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed that. I was like, just bam.
And for us, it's about cross-promotion. And a lot of people were kind enough to stop by our table, even though we're specifically a DC Comics-focused podcast, to chat with us. And I want to make sure that we shout out their work and the things that they're doing. So that's why we're kind of doing these as bonus segments instead of, we're not taking away from the regular show in any way, but we hope you enjoy these. Jim, want to remind everybody that our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. DCB Service will this week be putting up the new books, so head over to the site to check it out and see the incredible discounts that you can get on brand new materials as they're coming out. Whatever your shipping preferences, your bag and boarding preferences, DCB Service accommodates your collecting needs. And you can get shipping weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, however you want to get that done to get the kind of discount that you're looking for. I know a lot of our listeners wait monthly to get their books, and they get them shipped once a month, and they save an incredible amount on the shipping that way. I have no discipline. I can't wait that long, so I get them every week. I know you do too.
Yeah.
But I mean, the funny part is, even though we're paying for weekly shipping, I'm still saving a nice chunk of change getting weekly shipping. And everything's bagged and boarded for me and all that. Now, that convenience for me is fantastic to have it all done that way for me. InStockTrades.com has Watching the Watchmen hardcover, regular $39.95, 25% off, only $29.96. They also have the Absolute Watchmen edition, regularly $75, 37% off, only $47.25. Flash Rogues, which we're going to be doing next week, $14.99, 47% off, only $7.94. And Absolute Batman The Long Halloween. If you haven't picked that one up, we're going to be doing that this month as part of our 3-year anniversary celebration. Regularly $75, 37% off, only $47.25. And the trade is available for that still. It's $19.95, 37% off, only $12.57. I'm excited to talk about that Long Halloween book as well. InStockTrades.com offers free shipping on orders of $50 or more and has a ton of collected editions in stock and ready to ship. And I always go there first to check and see if they have something in stock because of those discounts. And they usually end up having everything I'm looking for anyway. Next week, Jim, on the show, Flash Rogues. We'll do a Speeding Bullets segment as well, because I know you've got to be chomping at the bit like I am to talk about a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The stuff going on in the Superman books I want to talk about with Mon-El, and we got to see how we're going to be leading to New Krypton. Actually, by the time we air that episode, the first issue of New Krypton will be out. Worlds of New Krypton will be out. So we can talk about how Superman wound up at New Krypton and what that looks like now, because that first issue, that'll be coming out. So I think we'll do a Speeding Bullets segment doing a catch-up on Superman, some of the stuff we've been enjoying in the Bat universe, Wonder Woman, things like the Mighty, Green Lantern's got a whole heap of stuff. We got a whole lot to talk about, I think, in a quick little Speeding Bullets segment to kind of just catch up on some of the universe at the moment. We have some interviews coming up over the next couple weeks, too, with Art Lyon and Fabian Icieza from Robin. So we're going to be chatting with them as well. So nice few weeks of Raging Bullets that we got coming ahead. Yes,
there's going to be some fun stuff.
All right. We will see you next week.
Bye.
My name is Brandon Christopher. I'm the Indigo Fire on the forums.
What are some books right now in DC? In the last, for you, it's been like a year since we've had this chat.
Yeah.
What are some books that you're enjoying right now at DC? What's something that's really grabbing you?
Actually, what's really grabbing me is the last batches of the Final Crisis tie-ins, the Legion 3 Worlds. Really digging that right now. Especially the last...
Number 3?
Yes. That made my heart melt right there. Still reading a lot of the Jeff Johns stuff. I've kind of fallen out of Superman for the time being, but I'm still reading Green Lantern, trying to get back into Blackest Night. Hopefully that's going to make everything make a lot more sense. A lot of the smaller, not so much Red books, though. I'm a couple months behind, so I'm still reading Blue Beetle.
Okay.
And
that's a great book.
Yeah.
And that reads, for anybody that's not reading Blue Beetle, that is a wonderful book to catch and trade if you haven't, because the characters are very rich. He's got a wonderful supporting cast, so definitely pick up Blue Beetle if you haven't. When you were talking about Green Lantern right now and Blackest Night, it's one of those things where really every month there is something new, some new hook that's coming out of the Green Lantern books. Do you have a favorite colored lantern, like that you're interested in? Is there one that is grabbing you? Is it still the green guys, or are there other ones that you're like?
I'm still more for the Green Lanterns, but I want to see how the whole color war's going to play out. Really, I want to see the orange, the Avarice lanterns, which look really, really cool. The blue ones actually kind of intrigue me also, and the indigo ones as well. I just want to see how in the universe this whole thing will play out. What balance will they bring if they do have any balance to it? What destruction can they wreak also? I just want to see almost like this summer epic, this knockdown, drag-out fight between 7 factions questions: who will live, who will survive.
Now, if you had a preference, would you like to see at the end of this there be one color group of lanterns again? Would you like to see them continue to have the factions? How would you like to see this kind of play out? Do you have a preference?
Actually, when it's all said and done, I really do want to see them have multiple factions still again. I think what's really cool is, for the longest time, Green Lantern's biggest rival has been Sinestro. You never seen Sinestro being you always know he had a yellow power ring. And then when Johns came on, you started seeing the Star Sapphires have their own core. And I really want to see what would this be if there was some resolve after Blackest Night, and they still had the Lanterns. Well, what would they be doing? Would they be doing certain things? Would all of them be good? Not all of them are going to be evil. So we have to realize, that sometimes you may see a Green Lantern team up with the Yellow Lanterns, get a cause across, or you may see a Red Lantern team up with the Black Lantern, hopefully.
Or it's funny, we talk about good and evil lanterns, but even that there's kind of a gray area there, because realistically, because they all have like their set MO, their set form of beliefs, it's almost like you've got different political backgrounds in these groups, where what would be considered traditionally good groups might come at odds over how to handle. We've already seen it with some of the team-ups where one group will overstep another group because they believe their way of handling the situation is better, which leads to some potential situations where you could have green versus blue. You could have, or you could have, we've already seen red versus yellow. Yeah. So it's not necessarily so cut and dry as good and evil being able to work together. So that to me is the intriguing thing about the book.
I think also, it's really cool to see, we've had conflicts between like Kilowog and Sora Knick-Knack 2 and Green Lantern Corps, over her reluctance to kill, or her reluctance to go all the distance, as some people call it. I remember during Sinestro Cold War, right away when Green Lanterns had the ability to kill a Sinestro Corps member, right away a lot of them were just going with wanton slaughter, but some of them had to step back and say, no, this isn't right. We're given this ability for a reason, and I want to see if some of them will maybe fall prey to other sides of the spectrum.
You make a good point, and you're right, because of the fact that changing philosophies might mean that they need to jump to a different lantern. And we already see, like, the Blue Lanterns are actively recruiting Hal, and to the point where they're saying, Hal, you're our guy, because of his past relationships. Yeah. So they're saying, basically, hey, you look at the relationship you've had with Gantet and all that, you should be with us, you should be our leader, that's what you were always meant for. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with Hal, because I actually have really enjoyed seeing Hal take on different colors in this, and how he has to deal with that, because he's been through so much with the Sinestro, with Parallax being a part of him, that now he has to deal with how these other emotions can actually lead to changes in, you're right, allegiances, and what that means. So I really like that aspect of it. It adds a nice little twist to it.
Yeah, it's not just the same comics that we're used to for so many years now. I like how Jeff Johns, especially a lot of writers now, can take a premise and just turn it on its ear and say, maybe it would be cool if we could do this instead. I'm hoping this all works out.
So that to me is really exciting. So I want to thank you for being, first of all, a friend of the show, and for supporting us. It's always great. This is the fun of cons now, is that we see so many familiar faces at cons. I remember the first con I went by myself, and I didn't know anybody else. I just wanted to be here. I wanted to see different creators and things like that. Now it's like we go to these cons, and you can walk through the aisles. In this case of the podcast arena, it's nice because we have so many friends that we see year after year. So, and that to me has been the pure joy of how I think comic fandom has grown now, is that we're no longer isolated. We can debate about these books, ones that we're passionate about, ones that somebody else isn't. We can kind of, you were talking about how some of you're not reading Superman as much now, but you've shifted to, you're enjoying some of the stuff like Legion of Three Worlds, for example. Yeah. Are you reading, did you pick up Adventure Comics 0?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Are you going to follow the Legion, do you think, beyond Legion of Three Worlds? Is it hooked you enough into it?
Yeah, I've been a big Legion fan since the 90s.
Okay.
It was one of the few books which kind of hooked me by the premise. I remember seeing the cover of Legionnaires #1, and you see Colossal Boy holding the XS in his hand. I'm like, oh, this looks so cool. I was like 8 years old then also, and it's one of those books that will stay with me. And a couple years ago, I fell into a whole mess of like Legion books. from like the Levitz run up until the Mark Waid run also.
Okay.
And so I've been going through reading those. It's one of the few books which I think has been the heart of DC Universe, even though it's not been the main focus. Yeah. They still adhere to like that sense of like, you know, the 1960s wackiness, or like the not taking everything too seriously, but still having a fun story.
But one of the great things about Legion is it's very adaptable to changing eras. You mentioned the Mark Waid run. The great thing is Mark Waid showed us that you can change and keep the core values of this team, but change it and make it more current and up to date without losing, like you said, that DC feel to it that book's always had.
Yeah.
You can always go back, as long as you go back to the core concept and you stick to that. You can, he did a very sophisticated political book with that I think if you look back to the roots of the series, it always had. And that's one of the nice things about the characters. They tend to adapt and change. And I have full confidence that Jeff Johns, as he's shown in the past, is going to pull from, I think, all of the eras in some way and bring all of that together to make a book that I think is going to be ultimately, I hope, satisfying for all Legion fans.
Definitely.
Yeah, so it's great. All right, well, again, like I said, thanks for stopping by and chatting with us. Pleasure. It's always good to see you, and I'll be seeing you, of course, over the next few days here. So
actually, no, next time I'll probably see you at Super Show.
Okay, cool.